All right, Jastin. A through Z.
P.
P. That's actually the perfect letter.
Nice.
Because as far as CineSlayers is concerned, or more importantly, me, P is for Penta. We were a little harsh on WWE guys last week. Everything's redeemed. Penta's in the WWE now. Official. I don't care. And it was amazing. It really was. I thought it was utterly fantastic. I loved his entrance. I love his look. I loved that they let him be him, because that is the most important thing when it comes to a wrestler like Penta. There is a reason why everybody knows who the fuck he is, like wrestling wise. And it's because he's Penta. If you have him come in as El Luchador Mysterio or whatever, like he's going to be nothing. Like it's not the same. If you try to like taper his swagger, the way he like that little shimmy swag walk he does when he comes down the ramp. If you get rid of stuff like that, if you get rid of him doing the Sierra Miedo, it's not Penta. And they just let him be him. And I also loved how insanely meta they were on commentary when Penta came out. They were like, the worst kept secret in the business. Penta.
Yeah, that was great when he said that. When Michael Cole said that, I was like, all right, that's tight.
Oh, yeah. And I also love, I know they did not bring up him being an AEW tag team champion or trios champion, but they did bring up Lucha Underground, TNA, AAA. They brought up every other promotion he's been a fucking champion on. You know, I love that they did that. I love, because like also it feels like, 6 years ago, if he had debuted, he would have just been like, oh, that mysterious wrestler that has never wrestled before, but he's here, but everybody knows him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Acknowledge who the fuck they are. I get why you didn't bring up AEW. I get that. But God, it makes it feel so much better when you get like a big crowd reaction. You have fans posting reaction videos online and all this other stuff. And in universe, WWE is acknowledging also, yes, this is the Penta you know. And he's here now. Like that makes me feel better, because a lot of people are like, man, I hope WWE doesn't ruin Penta, all this other stuff. When you do things like that, when you acknowledge why he's popular to other fans and you let him be him in this first match and all this other stuff, it gives me hope that he's going to be Penta and that they're just going to let him do it, And, I really liked the match. I thought him and Chad Gable had a fantastic match.
Yeah. He was the right opponent for him.
Yeah.
Not too high on the totem pole to where it was the kind of opponent that he could win against. But Chad Gable is so versatile. He can give anybody a good match. He's kind of that person that it doesn't matter if he's wrestling Cody Rhodes on SmackDown, he can do that. But then he can turn around and, be a good base for somebody like Penta. He can take all of his moves. He's athletic enough, but also believable enough that he could fight him and compete with him as well. So it was just like the perfect opponent for him.
Yeah, because I don't need Penta to debut and beat Seth Rollins in his debut match, And I'm also glad it wasn't a squash match. I'm glad that it was a good 15-minute match. Like show the people that just watch WWE why these other people are excited Penta's here. Let's see his moves. You know what I mean? It's not just a quick in out.
Yeah. Show that he can go. Yeah. Because that's the kind of wrestler he is. He has those long, 20-minute, 15-minute, sometimes 30 minutes or more matches. And it's like all kinds of crazy lucha athleticism and stuff like that. Like that's who he is. So yeah, it was just, it definitely, like you're saying, it was the right mindset with him the whole way.
And I also thought, like, from a fan perspective, there were some people that were like, oh, there were some botches. I don't think it should be called a botch unless somebody gets hurt. I think if it's a mistake and someone gets hurt, I guess call that a botch. Outside of that, it's kind of the fact that they're people. Like, I get that sometimes, you know, a wrestling match can be utterly perfect. Nobody fucks up once. But I kind of dug the fact that he was a little tense in the beginning. He fucked up some of his own moves. And I liked that just because it showed how excited he was to be there. Like, that he wasn't just stoic in the moment. That, like,
also, how many times did, you know, how it's not like him and Chad Gable got to work house shows every week leading up to it or anything like that. For all we know, that might have been the first time they discussed the match, could have been earlier that day.
And also, like, I don't think Penta's wrestled in a few months. Could have been. I don't, you know, on top of that, I don't think Penta's wrestled in a few months.
Yeah. So
there's ring rust, there's excitement, there's all kinds of stuff. But also, okay, yeah, there was some fuck ups a little bit at the beginning and stuff like that. And that Penta almost killed himself too when he went over the top rope.
Oh, on that dive.
Oh, that had to hurt. I mean, it just had to. Like, he did not get all the way rotated like he should have. And that had to hurt.
He ate it.
He
ate it.
But also, you could really tell when he settled in, though, too. When he got settled in. And also, I was curious as to what finisher they were going to do for him. Because Penta, especially in AEW, and to a lesser extent in Lucha Underground, but later in Lucha Underground, he was doing a package pile driver as his finisher. And in WWE, especially right now, the package pile driver is a move that gets security to come take you out and everybody calls you a serial killer.
Yep. Yep.
And I was like, fuck, what move are they going to do? And they went back to the Penta driver. I was like, oh, it's been a minute since I've legit seen him do a Penta driver and it be his finisher. You know, the Penta driver kind of became a transitional move in AEW. Like, and somebody made a joke. I saw somebody online made a joke about him doing the Mexican Destroyer. And they're like, oh, he did a Mexican Destroyer and Chad still kicked out. I was like, yeah, but that's a Penta move. For Penta, the Mexican Destroyer is a transition move.
Yeah.
And it's like The Rock when he would do a DDT. It's that. And also, like, you know, Penta needs to do 4 or 5 Mexican Destroyers before it's a finisher, which is crazy to everybody else. But I'm like, no, it makes sense in a Penta match. And I love that he did the sacrifice. That's something we got less and less of in AEW, is the sacrifice. And that was one of my that's one of the moves that made me love him in Lucha Underground. He'd win the match and do the sacrifice, and whoever in story, that meant that person was out for 4 or 5 episodes with a broken arm.
Yeah.
And I like that he did it in this. And then I love that promo he cut. I loved the promo he cut it afterwards. I've never once seen this man really do a promo in English. And he also did most of it in Spanish too. And it was utterly fantastic. No clue what this guy was saying whatsoever when he was speaking in Spanish. But it works in the same way that I listen to a shit ton of K-pop. I don't know what the fuck they're singing in Korean, but you feel the vibe. You feel the energy. You feel the emotion. And that's what drives you with it. It was the same in his promo. You felt this man's emotion. You felt this man's excitement. You felt his vibe. Cool. That's what I loved it.
Yeah.
You know,
it was tight.
So, yeah, utterly fantastic. And also, just with that too, it's just, you know, kind of one of the benefits of WWE being on Netflix now is it makes it infinitely easier for somebody like me that doesn't watch a ton of WWE to easily watch it. Or if I just don't watch it on Monday, I can watch it Tuesday. It's just readily available for me. And as much as I love you, Peacock, searching for anything in your platform is just like trying to search through the 9 circles of hell.
God.
I mean, trying to find anything in that is just like Dante trying to escape hell in the Divine Comedy. Let me go through the 9 circles and climb down Satan's body in the ice pool to find my way out. It's a mess. So I kind of like the fact that it's just I can go watch it, and it, you know, just makes everything like that easier for me. Like I said, over the last couple of weeks, I've watched way more WWE since it's been on Netflix than I have anytime it was on the USA Network. I legit don't think I have sat down and watched WWE on the USA Network in, what year is it? It's 2025 now, right? You know, easily since I was in Midland at one point, I guess. So, and it probably, if I did, it might have been over at your place one time or something, Jastin. That might be the last time I sat down and watched WWE Raw live on the USA Network. I was like, I've watched fucking clips of that. That's all I've done. So, I mean, it's been some decades since I've legit just sat down and watched a Raw. And yeah, kudos to them on Netflix. I've watched way more of it than I have in decades. So, you know, it was actually fun. Also, just a little fun thing, you know, just a little shout out for Jastin. They announced the Switch 2 this week. That looks real fun.
Yeah. Looked very interesting.
Apparently the Joy-Cons, you're going to be able to like put them on a table and slide them around to do some stuff with it. Almost like it's a mouse.
And I couldn't tell if it has chargers now or if it was, but they look like little chargers kind of connected to them.
Yeah. I don't know exactly how much of that's going to work, but I mean, it looked fun. Like it actually looked like it looks like, because they've more or less killed the DS. The DS is dead now.
Yeah.
And they've more or less moved to one console that is both the king of handhelds and legit, console in the console wars. And it looks like they just took the Switch and legit made it better.
Yeah. Much bigger screen. It looks like they fixed the joysticks. Like the way they were designed looked like it might, you might not have that drifting issue or those or the plastic tearing on top of them or something, which was a big problem with the Switch, just having to replace your controllers all the time. And then instead of sliding in, it seems like they just snap in. So that's going to prevent little rails and shit from getting all fucked up. Yeah, it just seemed like a more efficient design. For sure.
And you can play every Switch game.
Yep.
Hey, there you go. That's always a Rockstar move. Play any Switch game. Cool. You know?
Yeah.
That gives people a reason to upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
But no, looked just really cool. Also this week, we did get our first look at Daredevil, Born Again. And I'm not going to lie, guys, that trailer, it made me very mad. Very, very mad. Because, well, it did a very good job of showing why Daredevil is my second favorite Marvel character. And why it's probably going to be an utterly fantastic show. But it also made me think of Moon Knight. How bad they fucked it up. This trailer is more fucking brutal than the entirety of 6 episodes of fucking Moon Knight.
Man.
I'm never going to forget Kevin Feige saying Moon Knight's one of the most brutal things in the MCU. The fuck it is. How the fuck is your Daredevil trailer more brutal than that whole fucking show? And you want to tell me, oh, yeah, this is Moon Knight. The fuck it is. I mean, Daredevil was doing shit in that trailer that should be Moon Knight's Tuesday evening. But yes, it looks fantastic. But still made me mad.
Yeah, I I am one of those people that has not seen Daredevil yet. I know. I need to get on that. But I even saw the trailer and I was like, this looks good. Like, I know enough to know like who the people were and all that stuff. But yeah. So I'm going to definitely have to watch the original one and
the
then,
first 3 seasons. Yeah.
Or the first 3 seasons of it. And then jump on board with this because it looks like it's really good.
I'll say it's great. I love the Daredevil series. I thought they were all really good. Charlie Cox is a good Daredevil. You know, you've got Foggy Nelson, you've got Karen Page, you've got all these people. And I'm saying this, it's not even a spoiler. It's just a fact. Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk, though, to me, steals that show almost every fucking time he's on the screen. And I'm not going to lie. It looked like he's probably going to do some of the same shit in this one. He's just utterly fantastic. I know you got a little hint of him, Heather. A little hint of him in that Hawkeye. Oh, Heather. Oh, Heather. You haven't seen it, though. You haven't seen that Wilson Fisk. It's probably, to me, it is one of the just most perfect portrayals of a comic book character committed to screen, is him as Wilson Fisk.
I dig it. And I'm not surprised, like, knowing as much or a little as I did when I saw him in Hawkeye. He was great. Like, and also Vincent D'Onofrio is a fantastic actor and probably one of the greatest actors to play villains ever. Like, he's just great at playing villains. So yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. I mean, just to speak really quickly on it, what I liked about it is that everything that you like about the Daredevil series, I just saw. That was the coolest thing about it. I saw all of the same actors are back. I saw conversations with Fisk and Murdoch that were in the spirit of what they set up in the other shows. They were acting the same. The dialogue felt the same. The mood and the tone of it felt the same. The internal conflict with Daredevil, there were some hints of that. You saw hints of that, like, and then the fighting, I saw bones breaking and necks popping. I mean, I saw everything that, and John Bernthal is the Punisher. I saw the Punisher. I liked him in the series, and the Punisher series is not as good as Daredevil, but it's all right. It was fine, you know. It had some problems, but it was hella better than some of the other ones. It was hella better than Iron Fist.
Justin, everything is better than Iron Fist, bro. I mean,
yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Everything better than Iron Fist. But you know, I saw him. The Bullseye. I like their version of Bullseye that they did in the earlier Daredevil stuff that you're gonna watch. So like everything I saw, I liked. And then at the end, they kind of had they had the theme in there. You heard the theme with some like piano or something.
And so the Daredevil intro, especially in season 1, it was one of my favorite series intros ever. Loved it.
Yeah, it's badass.
And, you know, and plus, there's something about Daredevil that always ends up having some of the coolest lines in comics. Like, there's one time he goes to a priest and he's all like, you know, he's like, "Oh, are you here to ask for forgiveness?" And he's like, "Well, not really. Like, I'm not here to confess anything. I'm just asking for forgiveness for what I'm about to do." And you're just like, "Oh, fuck. Oh, Maddie Murdoch." And then also, once again, like, this has one of my favorite taglines of fucking anything ever when it's all, "A devil's work is never done." Because is there a more Daredevil fucking catchphrase than that? Like, yeah. Oh, it's sickening how fucking perfect it is. Because I once again think of Moon Knight and I'm just enraged. At least they're doing my boy Maddie right. Because like you said, Jastin, that internal struggle is one of my favorite things in Daredevil. Like, and I love it too when he's very open about it. He's like, man, I'm a good old Catholic boy. God, I do some fucked up shit. And the priest is all, well, are you going to stop, Matt? And he's like, no. I do what I have to do. And I just trust that God's going to forgive me. I ain't stopping, though. Oh, I love it. But yeah, this looks fantastic. Like I said, enraging all at the same time. On a more off-kilter note, David Lynch passed away today. Everybody should know. Twin Peaks, Mulholland Drive, Eraserhead, Blue Velvet. Lots of stuff. Lots of weird stuff. I'm not going to sit here and act like I am the biggest David Lynch fan. But I do get why people like his stuff. I love Twin Peaks, especially the first season. The second season does get a little weird, and it's because they knew they were ending. And so he tried to end it probably 2 seasons ahead of when he should have because of that. And then they brought it back like Twin Peaks: The Return. I'm sorry, guys. That was way too weird for me. I don't know what the fuck happened in that show. I watched all of it. I don't know what happened. But a lot of people liked it. If David Lynch like resonated with you, it hella resonated with you. Like the people that it clicked with are diehard fans of his. You know. And like there are aspects of things he did that I really like. And he also directed the first Dune also. But yeah, it's one of those things where I might not like everything that man's done. I can appreciate his influence that he's had on people. And it's so the, people being upset he passed away and all this other stuff, it's very justified because this man is insanely influential, even, like I said, from somebody that it might not have clicked with. I mean, it didn't. But I can still appreciate the impact he had, And Mulholland Drive, I did like that one. I like Mulholland Drive.
Yeah, that was really tight.
I think I remember you saying in like that, whenever we were doing that thing about our favorite shows of all time, I want to say that you mentioned that like Twin Peaks is the reason X-Files was a thing.
More or less.
So that's alone, you could tell the influence of David Lynch.
Yeah. Twin Peaks walked so X-Files could run. The ultimate problem with Twin Peaks is it was a little bit too ahead of its time. It was trying to do those like long form season long story arcs back when shows weren't really doing that. A lot of shows back then were an episodic thing, and there was some episodic stuff to Twin Peaks. Don't get me wrong, but overall that story, I mean, the initial story of, everything took place over 2 seasons. But also the problem was, and I think that's why it got out of hand at times, is because this is also when a season had to be 20-something episodes. Not all stories need to be told that way. And I think that's what kind of tore it up a little bit. And why I think it did have a viewing drop off that got it canceled. Because this was also the 90s. So if you did not have millions of people watching your show, it was considered a failure. You know what I mean? Like the numbers they were doing back then would be called like the highest viewed shit now. Because now we have just so much more. Because, cable was a thing in the 90s, but cable shows weren't really ever considered anything like broadcast was. You were a broadcast show. It was like, hey, you needed millions of people tuning in. Now there's 97,000 channels 97,000 streaming services. Each streaming service and channel has 90,000 of their own shows. If you get a few million people watching your show, you're doing pretty damn well at this point. Like, shit now that's successful would have been hella canceled. Like, canceled in 2 episodes back in the day. You know? And I think that was part of its problem. And I do think that that's why, like, Twin Peaks: The Return, I think that's what it was called, did a lot better because it was on Showtime. So they weren't as obsessed with, hey, we need to hit the numbers. They were more like, hey, let's just do this show. So that worked out better for it. But yeah, I mean, like I said, monumentally influential. And like I said, at least I can recommend Mulholland Drive. Go watch that. It's an interesting one. Don't watch it with your parents, though. Watch it by yourself or with a significant other. It's got weird themes in it. That's all I'm saying. Oh yeah, and apparently, according to Heather, I don't know how true this is. I just heard about this like 10 minutes ago. I guess 26 minutes ago. According to Heather, Joel McHale is playing Sidney Prescott's husband in Scream 7. He is replacing... Which one of those white guys was he replacing, Heather?
Patrick Dempsey.
McDreamy. Which, that's weird. I would have thought McDreamy would have come back. What the fuck is he doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm confused by it too. Unless, like, they're saying that the Mark that she married wasn't that Mark. But
that'd be so weird if it wasn't that Mark.
I know. Yeah.
Because they've been telling us since Scream 4 that it was that Mark.
Yeah. I mean, and it is like I see on IMDb, he is listed on the cast there. And then on his Instagram, he posted something about playing her husband, Mark, I think. Something like that.
I mean, kudos to both of them. That's a fantastic looking couple. Jastin, what was the last Scream movie you watched? Because I know you're a little behind. You haven't been on the last 2 Scream episodes.
Man, it might be 3.
You didn't even watch Scream 4?
I don't think I did.
Jastin, do it.
Yeah, I'm hella behind.
Jastin, I'm not going to lie. You're kind of in the perfect place to me.
In some ways. I mean, to be fair, like, in my opinion, I don't mind. I like all of the Screams to some extent. The 4th one is my least favorite. But 5 and 6 are fine.
Jastin, the best things about Screams 4, 5, and 6 are that they make you appreciate the bullshit that was Scream 3.
What?
I actually didn't mind Scream 3, to be honest.
That's because you've watched Screams 4, 5, and 6. If you hadn't watched those, Scream 3 is a pile of dog shit and is bad. But when you watch these other ones, you go, you know what? We just didn't know how good we had it in Scream 3. Just saying.
Yeah, you definitely should catch up, though, because, like, I just remember, was it the last one? It had to have been the last one where, like, Sterling, you emailed us and you were like, I'm predicting what's going to happen. And it was spot on. That was crazy.
Wow.
I'm assuming that you never read that email since you didn't watch the movie. So that's fine. But it was just like infuriatingly accurate.
Jastin.
That's crazy.
They're too predictable at this point. I was talking to some people about Scream 6. They were flabbergasted by Scream 6. They're like, man, how could you know this, this, and this? And I was like, well, because this happened. And I called this was happening before this. Like, so all these things, like, I called beforehand. I had a pinpoint accurate. These are the killers. Like 20 minutes into the movie.
Wow.
I was mad. I have never sat through a movie wishing I was wrong so much more than I was. I'm sitting there begging the movie. I'm pleading in my mind. Please prove me wrong. No.
Nope, not quite.
No. Irate.
I mean, it was so funny, but upsettingly accurate because it was just down to the absolute, like, entire, like, it's going to be this amount of people. It's going to be this is who these people are going to be. Like, it was ridiculous for you to just be that dead on with it.
I remember talking to a friend of the podcast, Mundo, about Scream 4 before it came out, or after it came out, but before I saw it. He was talking about how amazing it was and all these things. And I looked at him and I was like, this person's the killer, isn't she? Or, well, that's not even accurate, but I was like, this person's the killer. And he was like, yeah. How did you know that? I was like, I watched the fucking trailer. What do you mean? I watched the trailer. Like, motherfucker, I grew up on Scream movies. And you think they're going to throw me for a fucking loop now? Like, come on. Like, you got me in Scream 1. You got me a little bit in Scream 2. Nobody could call the brother that no one knew existed in Scream 3. So, that was a slight red herring out of left field. That was some bullshit. But I'm like, come on. I know how these movies go. Like, I'm desperately pleading, guys, Scream 7. Surprise me with anything.
Let it be Joel McHale.
One surprise. Just one. That's all I'm asking.
I mean, and really, like, and this is not to deter you from watching them, Jastin, because I still think you should, but, like, I think the reason 4 is my least favorite is because the motive of the killer is the weakest, in my opinion.
Scream 4 is actually the worst because it sucks really bad.
Okay.
Not to disagree with Heather. The reason why is because it's bad. But I'll say this. Sydney's on point in all of them, though. I won't take that away. Sydney's on point.
Yeah. I mean, she's the greatest final girl of all time.
Hey, that's why. How many times do I in this podcast with pro Sydney? Yeah. I would die for that woman. I might have to in this next one.
Well, I mean, and also, I think you liked the last one the least because Sydney wasn't in it, which is totally fair also.
Stupidest thing I've ever seen in my fucking life. Jastin, do you remember Jason Goes to Hell?
Yes.
It's going to sound like I'm saying that out of nowhere, but I'm not. You remember why it sucked? Like, Jason just wasn't in the movie? Like, yeah, it's the same thing. It's... Why do you go this deep in a franchise and go, you know what? Let's not have the character anybody wants in this movie in it.
Yeah.
Let's see how that works.
It's almost just unnecessary. But also, like, if I'm remembering right with the Jason Goes to Hell, wasn't he actually, like, not in hell until, like, the last few minutes of the movie?
Well, that's, like, because there's, like, the Jason cult and all that shit. I don't know if technically Jason was ever technically in hell until technically, I think, Freddy versus Jason, I think, is the first time you legitimately see. It's been a long time since I watched Freddy Goes to Hell, people. Okay. I just remember Jason's not in the movie. Like, there's a cult that's trying to bring the spirit of Jason into him or some bullshit. Like, the fuck was that movie? Like, all right, tonight we're talking about the movie Anora. It's like, hey, this movie's about this girl Anora, but when you watch it, Anora's not actually in the movie, you'd be thrown off a little bit. Just saying.
That's like Haunting in Connecticut too. Ghost of Georgia is not in Connecticut. We were waiting for Connecticut.
I was like, did this family move from Connecticut? Did they just accidentally bring a ghost from Connecticut? To me, it'd make more sense if it was Haunting in Connecticut 2, Ghosts of Georgia, and this family moved from Georgia to Connecticut. They accidentally brought some of their Georgia ghosts with them.
Yeah.
And they were now haunting in Connecticut.
That's the only way that title makes sense. I mean, there was no Connecticut. Like, it just didn't even need to be a thing.
Jastin, how would you feel if you went and watched Spider-Man 4 and just Spider-Man wasn't in the movie? It's that.
So basically like the non-Spider-Man universe, like watching every one of those.
Yes, it really is. Sydney.
So it's like watching Craven.
Sidney Prescott not in a Scream movie is the equivalent of all the Sony Spider-Man villain movies. It really is. It has the same feel to it to me. It's just like it's missing that thing, the main character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Man.
Guys, we said we were going to not do 3 hours.
We got it. We got this.
36 minutes, guys. Oh, man. Oh, bother.
Somebody will listen to me. Nobody knows anything but you. All right. Are you ready? Yep. Come on.
Cinema Slayers.
Hey, Cinefans, and welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Slayers podcast. I'm Sterling, and as always, I'm joined by Heather and Jastin. And tonight we're going to talk about what we liked, didn't like, and everything in between with the new movie Anora. This is actually kind of a catch-up. This is a 2024 movie. We're getting to it now. It's getting a lot of award buzz. We probably should have watched it back then, but we didn't. We're catching up now. We will go spoiler-free recommendations and scores, and then into a more spoiler-centric section with time codes in the description to allow you to jump around in both audio and video formats if you so require. With all that, who's our resident expert on sex workers?
What a great question.
I mean, don't take this the wrong way, but Jastin, I almost think it's you because you know about drenched cakes.
Huh?
Oh, man. I guess that's close, huh?
It is.
Talking about pancakes, but yeah, I guess pancakes, sex workers. I don't know.
I'm just saying.
Interchangeable.
I'm saying early in the movie, we get some cakes. So.
Yeah, that we do. That we do.
It's like one of the second things you see in this movie is some cakes. So.
Yeah.
Does that kind of just de facto make you our resident expert for this episode? I don't know why that's been my shtick lately, that we have to have a resident expert of something every episode. But I started doing it and I can't stop.
No, you can't stop.
So I guess, Jastin, you're a resident drenched cake expert. So what you got?
All right. Yeah, I really didn't know much. Like, I knew that this movie existed, but I hadn't seen any previews for this. I really didn't. I did see that it was turning up on some award list and things of that nature. And whenever you guys said, oh, we could watch it, it became an option to watch. I was like, oh, okay, we'll check out this movie. So I really had no expectations going in. The director, Sean Baker, I looked at his filmography and I don't think I've seen really any of his other movies.
You've seen one.
So, which one?
Red Rocket.
Why don't I remember that?
We did it. We did it at the same time we did Licorice Pizza. It was about the guy that was a porn star.
That's right. And we liked it better than Licorice Pizza, didn't we?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I'm remembering it now. Yes. Yeah. That was pretty good. Okay. So I've seen one of his movies. All right. I guess I didn't go far enough back. I don't even think I saw that in there, in the stuff that I looked at, but I didn't look. I just kind of glanced. Maybe I just missed it, but okay. Well, I know I like that movie. And I guess this movie is, I guess in a similar light to that movie, he really likes to kind of do these, like, sort of these complex characters, and they typically represent some type of metaphor, and then you're kind of going on this journey, and he's, and you know, it starts as a simple premise, and then unexpected things sort of happen. And I guess you could say, if that's his style of filmmaking, like if you watched all his other movies and if that's kind of like what he typically does, then yeah, I think that speaks to this too. I guess I can make a lot of parallels with how he kind of starts with this simple premise, and then all these things sort of unravel within that premise, and he kind of turns it on its head, because this was advertised as like, it's a comedy, but in the synopsis you read, it's like, oh, this person potentially could have this Cinderella story, but it's all in jeopardy and turned upside down when things happen and shenanigans ensue. So that's sort of kind of what the premise of it is. So with that in mind, I mean, I think overall, I really liked what he did here. I think it is a good movie. I think it is a pretty good film. It's got some really great acting performances. I liked a lot of the acting performances in this. And there are some performances in this where there are characters that aren't saying a lot, but they're doing a lot with facials. They're doing a lot with existing in the scene and in the moment. And he had a way of capturing things where, like, the character's not saying anything, but they're existing in the scene. And even just, this is one of those movies that I think is good to watch multiple times, because there are times where characters are in the background, but what they're doing is kind of very integral. And even though they're not the focus of the chaos, what they're doing is very integral to, like, the story and what they represent and everything like that. Y'all are going to love when I say this, but, and may or may not agree, but also this movie kind of pulls from another movie that I think is really good. So we're back to talking about Parasite, because I'm going to mention it here. In a lot of ways, this is Parasite with a sex worker and another. It's a Cinderella story, but it's Parasite. It's another story about the haves and the have-nots, the workers and the rich, and there's all that kind of shit and the dynamics of that and all this, and how a person sees themselves and where they fall on that totem pole. And there's a lot of shit in here like that. Another thing that this director pulls from Parasite is you go about an hour into this movie and it feels like one movie, and then he fucking topsy-turvy flips it on top of his head and you are watching another fucking movie.
I'm really glad you brought that part up, though, Jastin, because it really is. It's a tale of two movies, which is one of the most treacherous concepts in Hollywood, because it either goes great or it goes bad. And you either feel like you don't get enough of either one, and so you're unsatisfied by it all, or you like the twist. You go along for the ride. You get fulfillment out of it. But I'm not gonna lie, I had the same feeling with this movie, because I was so confused, because this movie was like brought, like I'd seen a lot of times, like as a dark comedy. And I'm not gonna lie, for the first part of the movie, I wasn't getting that. I wasn't really getting the comedy of it all, you know, because it was just, I mean, to me, this movie's, I would say its roots are further back than Parasite, because this is Cinderella with sex, drugs, and dance music. But I was just like, where's the comedy at? And then it swerves into it. When, like you said, Jastin, it goes into just a completely different thing. And that's when I started seeing the comedic elements of it all. We're really kind of showing up a lot more in that. And I think that this movie does fit in that regard of, like you said, A Tale of Two Movies. I really enjoyed this one. I liked that switch. I thought it was very fun. It was very fitting still, too. It wasn't like it was just two movies. It does a good job of, there's that one crucial scene that is that transitional scene from movie A to movie B. And they stick the landing in that transition. And that's why I really liked when they did that. But I was just, really glad you brought that up, because I forgot, like, it's not that I didn't realize that aspect of it, but I guess I just wasn't thematically tying that into other movies that we've talked about of being those two movies. Like, that part didn't click until you said that. And I was like, oh, fuck. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And what really makes it cool is, yes, it starts as a Cinderella story, but I love how it essentially turns that upside down. And even though it becomes another movie, it still kind of winds up maybe being a Cinderella story. Like, even still, it's a really badass movie, because it starts as the simple kind of Cinderella tale you're familiar with, but then he like fucking flips everything. And then we're on what feels and is a different journey, but we somehow kind of wind up learning kind of something similar to that fantasy or that Cinderella story, if you will. So that makes it a very unique movie, but it's got some strong messages. I think the characters all kind of represent something interesting. This is a conversational movie. It's fun to talk about. I saw an interview, just caught like a short interview with, is it Mickey Madison?
Mikey.
Or is it Mikey? Okay, see, I thought they said Mikey. Yeah, Mikey Madison. And she didn't really, and she wasn't, it was like a non-spoilery type. She wasn't really talking about the events in it, but she did say the ending was open-ended. So I'm curious as to how we all interpret the ending. Because the person who interviewed, it felt like had one interpretation, and she said, well, that's definitely possible, but there are multiple ways to interpret what happened at the end. So I can't wait to like dig into that to see if we all got the same thing or if we all interpreted different things. Again, kind of like Parasite, it does that kind of thing, you know, where there's these certain parallels and things you can draw at the end of it. So I guess in the end, and I'll talk more about the actors specifically when we get to it, because they are great. They're good together. The comedic timing is great. And like you, and I agree with what you said, Sterling. When it's time to be funny, this movie really is funny. Like, it's one of those where, but it's not, kind of jokes and stuff. It's situational comedy. It's situational funny. A lot of it is comedic timing, and it's because we are in this situation and because of the gravity of what's happening, but also just kind of when it gives you those lighthearted moments or whatever the film is trying to do on this journey we're on, situations wind up being funny just because of a character reaction or what they're saying or how they're playing off of each other. Everybody is just damn near perfect. And Mikey Madison, I know that she's getting award buzz and stuff like that too. she's one of the ones that's a standout in this. And yes, she is great. It's a very like real, I don't know if brave is the word, but definitely versatile. She's asked to do a lot. Like, she's a stripper, she's a sex worker, and she is every bit of that. And then, but there's this, but it's not just that. It's about how everybody else looks at her. It's about how she sees herself. It's about confirming the truth and the fantasy of that and the wanting to get out of that, but are you really out of it? And all this other shit, hell, the shit's going on with this character. But I loved it. I love the turmoil and the journey that this takes you on. So yeah, man, I understand the Oscar buzz. I understand the award buzz. It's a good ass movie, man. And I think it does deserve to be there. This was an enjoyable film to watch.
Heather, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. I knew I knew a little bit about it. Like, I definitely knew more of the like love story type of vibe that it had, and that, you know, it talks about, or like it shows in the trailer about like, oh, things get crazy and all of that. But yeah, I think this is one of those movies that like I was completely invested the entire way through. There was not a boring moment of the movie. I think that even though it's a little bit of a longer movie, they used every bit of their screen time to do really good stuff that added to the movie. There was nothing that really took away from it. And I just really, I like how they paced it. And I like how they just had this story, or I guess technically two different types of stories, unfold. And you kind of get both sides of the story equally. And I think that it's just balanced well enough to where you're on this journey with Anora or with Annie, you know what I mean? And like, it's just really well crafted storytelling. And it's just such a like unique and interesting story too. Like, there's elements for sure of this movie that you can kind of see in other things. But I mean, I don't really think I've ever seen a movie quite like this. And I like everything they did with it. Mikey Madison is phenomenal, actually. And it almost makes me a little bit sad that she didn't win more stuff for this. Like, she's so good in this movie. And I agree with you, Jastin, about just like, there's a lot going on with her. And I think that there's little hints throughout this movie and in the situation she's in where you can kind of see certain things that have made her into the person she is, you know. And I love that you get to see, that's why she's this very strong, headstrong, but also just like very opinionated person. It's also why there's certain fears that she has when she's around certain people. Like, it's just really well done. And I think she's such a strong lead character. And I hope I get to see more of her and stuff in lead roles. She's really good. I liked the dynamics that she had with all of the other characters. I think that like when it gets to sort of like I guess you would call it the second story or the second half of the story, and they transition into the more like comedy, like adventure-y type stuff in this, all of the people in that have such a great dynamic with each other. It's honestly the best thing about this movie is just everybody's dynamic with each other, and that they're funny, they're like kind of brutal, they're also kind of dumb, but they're also just trying to do their jobs. Like, there's so much also going on with them. And it almost like, if they had leaned just a slight bit more into the comedy with them, I'm just like, man, I really like, I kind of just want to see them all just be cool with each other and become friends and hang out with Anora and just like, you know, all right, cool, we handled business, let's go do other stuff together now. Like, they were just so fun when they were on screen together. I just really liked how it, in a way, I think in that regard, it also turned this thing on its head because of the types of characters they have in this. usually are completely portrayed a very different way than they are in this movie. And I really liked that a lot too. So, and also our guy Vanya, he's the worst, but like I can't say that guy was not an incredible performance of an immature, spoiled 21-year-old rich boy. Like he did that so well. Like from the very beginning, I was like, yeah, he seems like a 21-year-old boy. That's just 100% what he is. And I think that it really played a lot into everything else that follows meeting this guy. So yeah, it's just really well crafted, really well acted. You care about these characters really early on, or at least you care about Annie's character really early on in this. And you're just rooting for her the whole time. And there's certain dynamics that happen throughout this film that I'm like, I didn't see this being what I wanted the outcome to be. But by the end of this movie, I'm like, I don't really want anything else other than this one thing in my head that I'm just like, this would be great to happen. But yeah, it's such a good film. It's a solid film.
I had heard some stuff about it. I had seen the trailer for this, not intentionally. I actually just saw it one of the times going to the theater. So I knew a little bit about this movie going into it. One thing I'll say about this movie is this: I wasn't on the Challengers episode with you guys. I had watched it. I just wasn't able to be on the episode. And while I thought Challengers was a good movie, I was disappointed in Challengers. Because Challengers was billed as this sexy as fuck movie. It's not. It's not, people. Like, they're like, oh man, look at Zendaya. She's gonna be in a threesome. Man. Spoiler, there's no threesome in this movie or in that movie. And I just didn't like how it was billed as that. You know what I mean? I'm fine with the movie. I didn't like the fact that it was billed as this like insanely sexy, will like challenge you mentally with its sexiness movie. Because it wasn't that. Either that or I'm just so monumentally warped. It wasn't. This movie, when I had seen it and I had seen some, little blurbs about it and all this other stuff, it was touted as this sexy, dark, comedy that's, got heart to it and all of these things. And I'll say this, it did. And it lived up to the billing I had seen from people and stuff like that. And I don't mean this movie is sexy in that way of like, oh, look, hot, naked people. It has that. But I'm just saying, it still has an aura, just a vibe of sexiness to it. Like, I'm not even necessarily referring to sex scenes. I'm just saying that the mentality this movie gives off lends to that. But it's also not about that. And that's also what I love. I am so sick and tired of seeing movies about sex workers. And it's like, oh man, they're just so damaged. Oh, we have to get into all the heartbreaking, horrible things that have happened to them in their lives for them to become this tragically torn, damaged but lovable sex worker. And I liked the fact that this movie wasn't that. I liked that this movie was, yes, she is a sex worker, but she is also more than that. She is also a person. She is also, a multitude of things. Yes, other people try to define her by what she does for a living, but she doesn't define herself by that, and all those things. I thought that was a really nice, fresh thing to just inject a little bit of reality into a movie that is ultimately at its heart a version of the Cinderella fucking fairy tale. I liked those aspects of it. I like the fact that it does transition into a weird, almost buddy road trip movie of just these four people driving around New York. And it pulls that off without really a hitch. It transitions to that very successfully. And it works. And I think that that's why, to me, you don't feel the length in this movie. It comes in at like 2 hours and 20 something minutes long, but it's weirdly helped out by the fact that the second act is where the pacing is. That's where the movement is. That's where the speed is in this movie, is in the second act, which I think by getting from first act to second act or third act in the middle section is just kind of moving. Just kind of takes away from the feeling of length. And I think it does in a slightly more effective way than kind of what we talked about with Killers of the Flower Moon, because that's also kind of where its pace is in the middle of the movie. You know, that's a very long movie, but I think I'm starting to realize that kind of sometimes in a long movie, that's what kind of can help it not feel slow, because you can have some buildup in the first, you get a lot of movement in the second, and then you get some finality in the final act. Whereas most movies, you'll have a little bit of action in the front, you'll get the story in the middle, and then you get the finale at the end. You know, the big final thing, or if it's an action movie, that's the final fight, or the final, triumph over whatever in the end. And when you go long in those movies, that's why it feels slow, because the middle's so fucking slow. Whereas when you kind of flip it a little bit, I think that can kind of take away from a feeling of length. Because I didn't bat an eye at this movie. This movie is, like I said, 2 hours and 20 something minutes long. It didn't feel like that. I thought it felt great by the time the end happens. I agree with you guys. The acting in this, for the most part, just utterly fantastic. What'd you say her name was? Mikey Madison? Oh, great. Just great. Utterly fantastic. I felt like she didn't make a wrong fucking choice at any point in this movie. And to kind of tie back into something we talked about earlier, just so you know, Jastin, she is in Scream 5.
Oh, okay.
I was just saying that. She's in Scream 5. I'll just say this. Her acting's not as good in that movie. Great in this, though. Utterly fantastic. She's in another show I watched. I want to say it was called like Lady in the Lake. It was a Apple TV miniseries. She plays a side character in that. And she's pretty good in that too. But she's utterly fantastic in this. Just engrossing. You know, that like I said, there's a transitional scene from what we call, like the first movie to the second movie. And so much of that hinges on her to help make that transition happen. And she does it completely. Like you guys were saying, there's just a lot of subtlety in this movie too. With the comedy, I think that's why the comedy in this really works, is the comedy in this movie is very situational to the actual situation that's happening on screen. It's not situational to a time period. It's not anything like that. It's situational to literally what's happening. And I think that's sometimes the most effective way to do comedy, because it makes it timeless to a degree. As long as you're watching the movie, the joke works. There's just a scene in this movie, and I can say this, and it's not a spoiler or anything, but a character offers Annie a scarf. And she's like, fuck you, dude. You know, because of some stuff that happened earlier. And she's like, man, fuck you. And all this other stuff. Then like 10 seconds later, she's like, yeah, give me the scarf. And I know that doesn't sound like a joke. Because it's not. But whilst you're watching this movie and you see the situation before it and the situation that's playing out in front of you, it works as a joke. It legitimately works as a joke. Just asking somebody for a scarf. And there really is a lot of elements to this that, like I think you said, Heather, that you aren't expecting while you're watching it, but at some point during the movie, you're rooting for it. And it just kind of happens. And it just makes the movie that much more interesting. And I do agree with you, Jastin. I am curious about what our takes will be about the final scene. Because I get what she's saying with that. I think there's some open-ended elements to it. An open to interpretation element to it. And I'm kind of with you. I'm kind of curious to see where we all kind of land on that. Based on like how, you know, we took in other elements of the movie. Other than that, like it was, you know, I thought it was really good. I really get it. Like why it's getting a lot of buzz, why it's getting a lot of talk. I think pretty much every bit of that is more or less justified. I'd really have to think really hard about all the other movies I've watched in 2024. But at least right now, I get why. Why did I sound like Christopher Walken when I said why? I get why it is getting that buzz, though. Because at least as of right this moment, yeah, I could see it being, yeah, it's definitely one of my top movies that came out last year. And I can't necessarily say it's like the top without really giving that some more thought, but yeah, it's easily one of the top though. Like just without a doubt, like, you know, without putting deeper thought into it, I'm like, oh yeah, it's easily one of the top movies last year that I saw. Spoilers? Or no, recommendations and scores?
Yeah.
Yep.
And score.
I'm going to do that one more time.
Recommendations and score.
There we go. Otherwise, we were just going to give scores. Heather, what you got?
Yeah, I do recommend it. I think it's just really great storytelling. I think it's a unique story. Acting is on point from everybody. There's not a reason not to watch this. It's going to keep your attention the whole time. I definitely think it's worth a watch for sure. And kind of like what you said earlier, Jas, I think it was you saying like on rewatches too, like it would be just really going back to see some of the like nuances of like characters and what they're doing in certain scenes after you've seen it a first time around, I think would be interesting. You know, I do think that even on a rewatch, this would be a fun one to visit. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. I'm going to give it, we'll go 90. I'm going to give it 90 sparkling hair strands out of 100.
I really like that. I just thought it was nice, that little subtle sparkle in it. Jastin, what you got?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to recommend it too. I mean, the only people that like, I mean, we're all adults here, so I don't care. But, you know, I guess somebody has to say that it's got definitely a lot of sexual content. There's hella sex, there's hella nudity, there's conversations about sex, and there's motherfuckers having sex.
The
so
first scene of this movie is just breasts.
For you.
Just the very first thing in this movie is breasts. It's breast,
pretty
ass,
much.
breast, ass.
So it's pretty unapologetic about that stuff. So if you are a person where that is a problem for you, maybe I could see that being an issue for you. But if you're just the kind of people like we are that just watch anything and it's less about that and just more about what everything means, it's not gratuitous in a way to where it's meaningless. I feel like all of it has meaning. All of it means something. And there are subtle things you can pick up on even in the sex scenes that sort of lend hints about the characters and who they are and what they represent and what the relationship dynamics are and everything like that. So I think whereas like I just go back to Parasite, like I think the cool thing about this movie is where Parasite I think is a masterwork of visual storytelling and angles and shots and stuff like that. This is sort of like a masterwork of like acting and like connection and situational comedy and timing and stuff like that. This is the very human part of that. And that one was more of a visual medium for it. But in the same regard, this is kind of a masterwork of that. There's really something about the conversations characters are having, what they're doing, how characters are reacting to each other. And I feel like it all sort of comes back and means something about that character or characters or dynamics, things like that. So I just really think this is like a masterwork of that. And I agree, like, even though it was over 2 hours long, you don't feel that. And I think that's kind of when it works right, that is the advantage of kind of having a movie start one way and then flipping it on its head and transition it to another thing. Sometimes that's just more interesting. Sometimes throwing you for a loop like that, kind of shaking things up like that, juking you, if you will, with the story. When it's an unexpected ride, sometimes it's just a more interesting one. And one thing I can say about this is that I never felt like anything happened quite like I thought it was. This really is that movie where he's doing a lot of stuff with the sleight of hand and stuff like that. It's almost like a good magician where you think you know where the coin is, but then suddenly he pulls it from behind your ear. That's kind of what this movie is. Just when you think you know kind of what it's going to do, it kind of does something a little different, or it does it not quite how you expect. And I think that even kind of goes for the ending. The way things happen kind of is not exactly how you expect things to happen, but it sort of adds to the meaning and the open-endedness of it and kind of what it's saying about some of the characters and what they're feeling. So yeah, man, this is kind of, to me, it's kind of one of those masterwork movies. There's more to it than just what is simply happening on the screen. There's a lot under the surface. There's a lot on the surface. It's just a really, really well-made, well-crafted movie, like we've all been saying. So if that floats your boat, I'd say give it a try. I think everything in it serves a purpose and it's good. So yeah, we'll go. I'll say 93. Man, what do I even want to? Man, there's so many things I could say. Yeah, we'll just go with that. 93 nice gestures with the scarf. I'll take yours, Sterling, or your mention out of 100.
Yeah, I recommend it for everybody. I won't give that caveat that Jastin said. Everybody should watch this movie. Okay, maybe
everybody.
Maybe not children. But if you are an adult, yes, you should watch this movie. Because you are an adult. Get over it. I think it's great. I really did. I really, really like this. I know Jastin is trying so hard to just attack me with Parasite references. But you know what? It ain't going to work. This is a very good movie. It's very character driven. And I think like you said, Jastin, it really does a nice way of like giving you the expected, but sometimes just giving you the expected in an unexpected way. You know, just doing it that way, you're getting to the same type of ending or or you know, an idea or a plot point that you think you're going to get, but it just doesn't go there the same way. And there's just some crazy interesting dynamics in this movie all throughout the movie. Every time you're introduced to like a new character, it's like an actual main character in this movie, or however you want to look at it, they all just have a very unique way of interacting with each other, interacting with other people. And it kind of keeps it fresh and a little bit more realistic in that way. But yeah, it's, I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think you will too, listener. I think you will too. Or did, because you might have already watched it. I think you did too. I'll split the difference with you guys. But I think I'll have to lean a little bit more Jastin's way. 92. 92. Jastin, you took my scarf. 92 4-carat diamond rings out of 100. If I'm doing some quick math in my head, CineScore is a 92. Spoilers?
Yep.
Spoilers.
I was staring at my soundboard and I'm just like, what the fuck button is it? I've pressed this button how many times now? And I'm just like, I don't know what button to press. Spoilers. I don't want to jump straight to the end and us discuss that now. You know what? But I'll discuss the end of the first movie. I'll discuss the transition scene because, you know, the first movie in this it really is like a young, immature guy. He says he falls in love with a sex worker and, you know, all these things. They're all doing drugs, going to parties, just going to Vegas, wreaking havoc, spending money, having fun, getting married on a whim, you know, all of those things, and just having that life. And then, you know, then Rich Boy's family finds out that he's married to, as they state, a prostitute, and how that's horrible. That needs to get fixed. That's when all hell breaks loose. Husband just runs away. I'm not gonna lie, that was really funny. Or shit just happens. He just runs away. And homeboy chases him down, falls on the ice. The other guy's trying to stop her. And he's just like having to hold her and like tie her up with a phone cable. And everybody's like, what the fuck are you doing? Stop that. And he's like, no, I have to. And they're like, no, you stop it. And then he's like, no. And then they're like, look, you got to stop it. She breaks a fucking guy's nose, gives him a concussion, bites the fuck out of this other guy. It's just, she is like a fucking badger. And it really is just, as weird as it's just funny. The way the scene just plays out, it's funny, you know. And whenever the other guy shows up and he's like trying to talk to her and they end up disagreeing. And so she just starts screaming. You know, she's technically screaming that, you know, rape, like as in they're like attacking her. But like, she's just screaming super high pitched. And they're like, oh, we got to find something to gag her, blah, blah, blah. And then Igor's just like, quit fucking screaming. And then they find that scarf and all this other stuff. It weirdly, like, it has a lot of comedic tones. Like when they go to that candy shop and she's just like, have you fucking talked to him and all this other stuff. And like, that guy's just like, oh, I'm big bad. You're not going to do shit, all this other stuff. And then Igor just gets like, walks up to him and just takes his bat, just fucks everything up. And then just like looks at this one last candy jar and just goes, poke. Like it's one of those things. It sounds like nothing. It sounds just kind of silly and dumb. It's genuinely funny though, in the context of what you're watching. And that's what I mean about this movie is a lot of situational and contextual humor. And so when you're watching that scene play out, it's actually really funny and stuff. And, you know, it's like this weird shenanigans of these people going around New York. Like when they go ape shit on the tow guy. And she's just sitting there going like, you are some crazy motherfuckers. Absolutely crazy. I don't know. I chuckled at that. And like I said, it sucks having to try to explain it right now. Because I get it. It just sounds like a scene. It doesn't sound funny. But like I said, when you watch it in the movie, it's a genuinely funny scene. And then, like, you know, it's just all this chaos that happens with that is all just kind of funny. Like, there's a random scene later. I don't know if I've ever, like, watching a movie, just laughed because another character laughs. But that scene towards the end of the movie when the dad starts laughing, I chuckled too. Because it genuinely works in that scene. And I loved it. But then, like, you get some really weird character dynamics in that. Annie and Igor. I don't know what this movie was. Because I'm watching, and I think Igor, especially, Jastin, is probably one of the characters you were talking about that's in scenes and not the focus of scenes, but is one of the most interesting thing in all the scenes. Just doing a lot by just standing and looking and doing just little things that just weirdly develops his character. Like, so much of his character development is almost by what he doesn't do and what he doesn't say. And that tells you as much about his character as what some other characters do and say. But I genuinely was just enthralled by the Igor Annie story as it develops throughout that movie. I was just utterly captivated by that in every possible way. My favorite joke in this movie, and once again, I understand it's not going to sound right, me just saying it, but I think it is genuinely one of the funniest things in this movie. She's talking to Igor towards the end of the movie, and she's like, why didn't you rape me? And he's like, what? And she's like, why? Why didn't you rape me? He's like, what? Why? She's like, yeah. He's like, because I'm not a rapist? I laughed. Because I thought that was just a weirdly great answer. Of like, to him, he's just like, what do you mean, why didn't I rape you? Where are you getting? Rape was never on the table. He's like, he's so just not that. It was just the idea that anyone could think somebody was raping anybody at any point. He's just like, where the fuck are you getting that from? He's like, we've never been further away from that ever. But it's a weirdly funny joke. And like I said, I get that it doesn't sound like a joke. I get that you might be going, Sterling, that's not something you should joke about. Even if it is funny in the movie. But it is. Like the way it plays out in this movie, I promise you, it makes sense. It's not just an inappropriate joke. It's not a poor, like, it's not like a unsensitive joke. It legitimately makes sense within the context of these characters, the movie, everything. And like I said, to me, was the funniest joke in this movie. It's just his reaction to it. He's like, just because I'm not a rapist. I thought it was fantastic.
I do think that's interesting. Like, you're right about Igor's character in general, but like just the dark humor that it has, it really is one of those where like this movie, if this movie in a sense like didn't pass the vibe check it was supposed to pass, it could have fallen flat in multiple ways. You know, like it's just because of the charisma that it brings and the actors bring and all of that, like everything they do in this movie works. In a lesser made movie or a lesser well-told story, those types of jokes are like, what was that? That was super weird. Why would you have that in here? And like the thing about like, you know, she's screaming at these guys and he's screaming back at her to stop screaming. And like things like that do not work if you don't have a super tightly intelligent script. So, yeah.
And I think it goes back to something you were saying, Jastin, I had it. And as soon as I said your name, just right out of my brain. Oh, no. I don't know if I'm getting it back. I have no, it was something with Igor.
What about him being in the background of scenes or?
No, because I touched on that a little bit. And I was going to let you expand on that. Oh, no. I hope I get it back. But right now, no. God, no idea.
Like maybe it'll come back once I start.
I hope so.
Baby.
I hope so. I know exactly what it was. Earlier, Justin, you were alluding to, weirdly enough, like you get characterizations and themes in the sex scenes. And I was going to touch on that because Heather, you brought up a little bit like the Vanya character, how he's very immature. He's very this, he's very that. I like it because you actually get aspects of that in the sex scenes. The way that he's just sitting there going, I'm going to be a jackhammer. We're getting this done like bam, 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 as fast and hard as possible.
Bam. Fast. Yeah. On to the next thing.
Yeah.
And undressing and like flipping over his bed to like get ready for sex. Like,
yeah. But then he's also like bang, 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 done, sex, video game. Okay, round 2, bam, video game. Bam, Vegas. But like those aspects of it like are very telling of his character. Because he is just so consumed with himself and so consumed with the now and so consumed with the immaturity of everything that the idea that sex doesn't have to be fast, doesn't have to be this, doesn't have to be that, never has crossed his mind once, ever. And that scene where she's like, hey, let's slow it down a little bit. We can take our time. We don't have to just bang one out in 15 minutes and move on to the next thing. And he's just like, what do you mean? And she's like, let me show you. Like, that's very telling of who he is as a person. And it's done through just a sex scene. But it's not like you said, Jastin, it's not just meaningless, sex for sex sake. There is storytelling in the sex scenes, in those things. Because you can also see the different way that Annie starts thinking about him and interacting with him also through him. Because those change over time and stuff like that. So those are aspects of those things that do inform and give you information about the characters and their growth or their changes or their, developing of feelings or not, or whatever, however you want to look at it, is done through some of those scenes too. Which is also the more authentic to actually how it is with a significant other. Like if you have sex with your partner or whatever, like that changes things, but it also like informs about how your relationship is and stuff like that. Most unhealthy relationships aren't just banging it out all the time, because if you're having problems in certain aspects of things, it influences those things. And like, so there is some authenticity to it too, to where like, like the way her feelings are changing towards him changes how she, it's less transactional at that point. Therefore, she wants something different,
something more intimate.
Yeah. And so like things like that, it kind of just, it's storytelling through sex scenes. And honestly, it takes a director that cares to actually be able to do that. Because if you don't care, it's just sex scenes. You get showgirls. This is something different. Even that one time she goes over there and she's like, hey, you paid for the whole hour. Like, like that's her kind of developing feelings for him, because otherwise she would have just bounced. But she's like, no, like I want to stick around. I want to spend more time with you. Yes, it might be to you just having sex again, whatever. But like, that's storytelling elements of the way her character is potentially developing feelings for this other character. Or at least if you don't want to call it feelings, just the idea that she wants to just spend time with him. So, there's things like that lesser movies would not have done. That this movie was able to like capture in a more real, authentic, and compelling way. So glad I remembered that. Oh, that would have drove me nuts. Heather, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I love that point that both of you said about like there's storytelling in the sex scenes, because again, like sometimes you do feel like movies are doing it because they're like, people want to watch this movie if there's sex in it, and like there's thoughtfulness to why, and a lot of people obviously like they don't care if there's story involved with it. They're just there for the sex scenes, and that's totally, your prerogative, whatever you want to do. But like this one, yeah, it really was thoughtful in how they told that. And like another example, I think too, of just how she's viewing him and how he's just really showing his immaturity is the scene when she's over at the house and she's doing the dance for him. And she's like, you feel like she's really putting in this effort and she's doing this like sexy dance for him. And he's more interested in like the music or something. Like it's super weird. But then as soon as she's done with it and she's like, all right, let's have sex, he's into that. Like he just is not on any sort of maturity level whatsoever. And you get that again, just through a scene with no words, it's just their interactions that they're having with each other. So it really is like really brilliant in how it does that. Like I think that it's kind of a masterclass in a way of how it really does that with a movie like this. And like, I think that it's the interesting thing too about Annie's character is yeah, like it's not your just standard or like your story about like, oh, this poor broken girl who has this job. And like, she clearly, in a sense, like she enjoys what she does for work. You know what I mean? But she also has these things about her that like, she has like a wall up in a way because of, you could tell just things that she's experienced. Like, you know, when she just immediately assumed that Igor was going to assault her and things like that, where she's just like, well, if the other guys weren't around, you totally would have done that. Just immediately coming to that conclusion, likely because of things that she's experienced before and how she's seen other people be with her or with other people. And even just seeing how, as much as she's a very independent person and she does what she wants to do, she really does like care what people think. She really like has this thing in her where she wants to be accepted. Like even the scene when Vanya is talking about like, let's go to Vegas and get married. And she's like, don't tease me with that. Like, don't say that. Like showing that actually would have meant something to her, because it meant that somebody actually wanted to be with her instead of just spend the night with her. And, you know, and even just like the way that they interact with Vanya's mom and how like crushing it was for her to feel like, oh, I just don't matter at all. And like what I want in the situation doesn't matter. And fighting so hard to be like, no, me and Vanya are in love. We want to stay together. And to just see Vanya not fighting for that too. Like you just see how it affects her. And like, again, you get that storytelling, you get background and character building just through those simple things. And I feel like that's just such a great character writing for all of these characters to just really, they don't have to give you the exposition and be like, let me explain my entire life to you just so the audience also knows. They didn't need that in this movie because they did it with their storytelling. And I really just loved that. And like something that you talked about earlier, Sterling, with the other characters, the guys that worked for Vanya's dad, like, I think what it is about them is these are some really interesting and weird dynamics because of the personalities of all these different people. But like, I think that's what actually makes these feel like some of the most well-written people in a movie. Like they feel like people that have different interactions with different types of people. Like even the I'm forgetting the guy's name who that worked at the church, whatever his name was in the movie. Toro. Yes. He like he was just so always wanting to like please Vanya's parents and was always just like, whatever they need me to do. And like, I'm going to be in so much trouble. But then the way that he interacts with the two people he's in charge of, he's just like, you guys are all idiots. And then with the girl, he's like, no, please just like help us out. And like, he just is such a like dynamic character because he's a person. He's a real person who has complex relationships with different people. All of them are written that way. And to even have one written that way is great. But when you have all three of these guys who in any other movie, you'd be like, well, these guys suck. They're the bad guys. They're just trying to like get this job done and get out and make her do what she doesn't want to do. In a lesser movie, that's how you feel. But in these, you're just like, these guys are so like interesting. Like they have layers to them that we get to see throughout, especially Igor, of course, but you just get to see that played out more as the story goes on. And it just like, and that's why the funny moments are so great. I think that transition scene, as we've been calling it, is probably the best scene of the whole movie, because it's not only that whole like, oh, things are about to rev up and get crazy. We're about to see what's really happening in this relationship. These guys enter into the story at that point, and you're like these guys, like what is their deal? What are they doing? Why do they care so much about this? And then the guy gets his nose broken and he's putting walnuts on his face to fix it. And he's just like sitting back and he's like, she's crazy. Just make sure she doesn't get out. And like, they're just, you feel like almost like it would be a, you know, these guys are all roommates living together and like, just, you know, like a sitcom about these guys or something. But it just works so well because these are people that like, they don't have the same relationship or interactions with everybody else because each of them has their own specific relationship and you get to see that, and not overly for anybody, but you still get to see that in every one of the characters. I think that was just really a great and smart choice to do. And I will say, I mean, really, it's one of those movies that there is no criticism really, because like you said too, Sterling, every choice that Mikey Madison makes is spot on. Like no notes whatsoever. Like everything she did was great. It really is one of my favorite acting performances of 2024 for sure. And it's, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like my only thing, and it's because I have to be nitpicky, is just I maybe would have preferred a little bit different ending, just slightly. But it's open-ended. So it's like, maybe I don't need that. But if I have to be like super picky about anything with this movie, that's literally the only thing I could say is like, oh no, would have liked something a little bit more concrete that makes me feel good. But we don't get that, and that's fine. I don't know. I just feel like like at no point did I think that Vanya was going to actually step up and be like a good guy because it was just so crazy too, because I felt my own frustration at his actions the way that Annie did. You know, it's just like she's been trying to talk to him this entire time and he's just like, oh no, like you said, he only cares about himself and he's in his own world where he's like, but I'm just too tired and hungover and I just don't want to talk right now. And immediately when his parents are there, he's like, oh, I got to go to my mom. I need to talk to my mom. Like just no communication with Annie about what's happening. And he just completely wrecked her world with what he did. And he did not care. And that's just a special kind of douchebag. And also he's a 21-year-old kid too. So it's like, do you really expect anything different from that? Not really. So I don't know. I think every choice and decision that they made to tell you who these characters were was pretty near perfection. So yeah, I think that my favorite thing about this movie was just the character development we get in the very subtle things that they do in the movie.
Well, that'll add to the interesting conversation about the end. Jastin, what about you though? What are your spoiler thoughts first?
Yeah. So I just think like, especially like when you're looking at that first act and we're kind of developing Anora and Vanya and that relationship and everything. Like I said, just a masterwork of like dialogue and people and interactions and everything like that. Because right away you're looking at Anora and she's doing, you know, she's stripping, she's this sex worker, and this seems like a pretty high-end place. Like all these people are pretty, they got private rooms. The place looks like this didn't look like some run down stripper joint. This looked like one of those like almost kind of VIP. There's lights everywhere, there's special rooms, and like damn near all the women looked good that were there. You know, not all strip places are created equal. Like sometimes they're depicted as these down in the dump run of the mill places, but this was seemed like high end, you know.
There's a reason why I am not a purveyor or a customer or of what you aptly called strip joints. Because when the first one you go to is not a good one, it taints you. Yeah. You just expect the worst every time from that point on. Because you know what that is. That's the only thought you got. And yeah. It's I don't want to necessarily use this word, but I kind of have to. It's a haunting. Is what it is. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say to that. That Jastin, you kind of hit a little too close to home.
No, I get it. I get it because I've been to some terrible ones, but I've been to a good one. I've been to a few bachelor parties that were at
you live in
some
Atlanta
good
for a little bit,
and I had fun.
You lived in Atlanta for a while, right? In Georgia?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's the mecca of strip clubs.
Oh yeah, there was a raw one I went to over there. It was like
Atlanta, Georgia is
best.
It's the U.S. capital of strip joints. That's what they are.
Yeah,
there's a reason why anytime you hear about an athlete or a musician or something getting in trouble at a strip club, it's in Atlanta because that's where they all go. Because that's where the good ones are. You know where the good ones aren't? Odessa, Texas.
No. My worst experience was one over there because
that was my first.
And a cousin was working there, and I went, fuck.
Weirdly enough, when I went there,
that was terrible.
The person I went there with, their cousin was also working there. It's a very weird thing. I'll just put it this way. Let me set the scene. My first time ever going to a strip club, go in, pay like, I don't know, $30-something or whatever, because I was under 21. So they're like, yeah, you got to pay a ton of money. Even though I don't get that logic, because I'm like, you don't sell alcohol in here anyway. It's BYOB. So why does it matter if I'm under 21? I don't understand this. But I go in there, and the first thing, my first experience at a strip club is a woman on stage with a dollar bill rolled up inside her, but sticking out. And she was like poking this guy in the forehead with it. And I'm just staring at this like, what in the UTI am I seeing right now? I was flabbergasted. I am a very sex positive person. There's very few things that people could say that they've done or like to do or whatever sexually. And I'm like, hey, that's not for me, but I get it. It's for you. That's cool. But no.
That was a bit much, huh?
I draw the line somewhere. I didn't want to do anything the entire rest of that night because I don't want to risk that dollar bill ending up in my hands. I'm not going and buying a water. I'm not getting no change for nothing. No. Because I don't want anything to happen to where that dollar bill might end up with me.
So okay, got it. So no red Washingtons for Sterling.
You son of a bitch. You son of a bitch. You
okay, but anyway,
motherfucker.
But anyway, go to sleep on that one, motherfucker. Respectfully. But it was that was a pretty good one, wasn't it? That was a good joke. Okay, anyway, like one of my better ones. One of my better ones on this podcast. But anyway, it was a high-end strip club, right? So you could tell like this was not your typical run-of-the-mill place. But the thing about it is that Anora doesn't seem sad or downtrodden or like y'all are saying. She seemed very sure of herself and she was hustling. She was, let's go over here. Come with me, honey, to the ATM. Talking to some of them. Yeah,
she was about that business.
You know,
she was like, cool, you want to go to the VIP room?
Yeah, you know, she seems like somebody really about it. And, you know, conversing with one of the other girls and they're talking about, this guy said that I look like his 18-year-old daughter, but he bought 5 dances and they're having a laugh about it. And the final thought was, well, hey, he bought 5 dances. You know, you made some money tonight. You know, she seemed very in this place, very about her business and all of that. And she just seemed like a confident woman. If she was doing anything else that wasn't sex work, if this was her and it opened and we're in a mall and she's doing the same shit in a retail store, you wouldn't say shit. You would just go, damn, here's a woman that seems sure of herself and is good at her job.
I mean, you really could see her having that same conversation in like the break room of like a stock exchange, like one of those places where they're like, yeah man, I got this guy to fucking buy this and all this other stuff. And they're like, yeah, the fucking idiot. And they're like, fuck yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's that type of thing. Like she just had that confidence to her. And that's what I was going back to earlier when I was like, I was so glad that this movie wasn't like oh man, this is Anora, the sex worker with the tragic backstory. And while she seems like she's okay, you're going to find out about all the terrible things in her life that led her to this dead-end place. Because how many fucking times have we seen that goddamn story?
Exactly. And that is not every sex worker, stripper's life. You know, it's just not. But that's what we have come accustomed to think. And I think also society-wise, it's so low on the totem pole of jobs in a lot of people's minds. Though some of them be making hell of money. Like, really is not, though. But, like, there's in a lot of people's minds, though.
Good chunk of them to make more money than I do. And I make well above what is considered like a median income or like a good income. And they're I guarantee you there's some that blow me the fuck out the water. Not even close.
Like what, man, I've talked to some of them. What some of them make in a day, I'm just like, fuck if I can make that in a day. But anyway, I don't know. Let me keep working on this body. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I need to make some better decisions about my life.
Jastin, anyway, go be that magic bike. Go be that that Jastin with Jastin Credible or something.
I'm telling you.
Jastin Credible. That's great.
I love it. And there was a wrestler called Justin Credible. So I love everything about what you just did there.
Oh, Jastin, you could be a wrestling themed stripper? Dude,
of course I could.
Oh, I'm going to put you in this hold. I'm going to suplex you. Like, oh man, all the things you could say.
I'm telling you, man, I come out with my gear. When I pull down the straps, it's time for you to tap. I mean, it's all there. It's all there. Anyway, but let's not go here with this. We said with this wouldn't be 3 hours. I got to keep going. I'm barely in the opening scene. But what I liked about all of that, one of the best parts of that, though, was when they're all in I'm going to just call it the locker room to save time. And she's talking about how the DJ disrespected her. And she's like, hey, man, this guy, he comes out, his pants aren't zipped all the way. And he's kind of coming in like he's acting like he owns the place. And I gave him my music lineup and he was real condescending, man. We're not going to have that. And she's kind of talking to the manager. So right there, you kind of see somebody who she respects herself. Right there, they're planting those seeds that she doesn't see herself as just this low-level worker at this job that a lot of society sees as the lowest totem pole of of kind of work that a person can do. She doesn't see herself that way. But this really comes into play when we meet other workers, which is why we wind up in a car full of workers, all kind of doing some shit that the rich people are controlling. But anyway, man, this movie's fucking tight.
Well,
but like,
I want to just go back to one thing that ties into directly what you're saying before you transition off of it. That scene when she's asking for a week off. And he's like, I just gave you New Year's off. I can't give you a week off. And she's like, when you give me health insurance, workman's comp, and a fucking 401k, you can tell me when to fucking work.
Yep.
And the guy's like, well, hey, you ain't getting those things, so fair enough.
Yep. You ain't getting none of that, so goodbye. But yeah, so right away, this is somebody. Yes, she's a sex worker. She's a stripper, but it is very much a job, and she's competent and capable, and she obviously thinks highly of herself and wants more for herself. You know what I'm saying? And so when our prince, who's not the prince, Vanya, swoops in, and it starts as this transactional thing, just like y'all talked about. And now we're on this, and then be the girlfriend for a week, and there's fun, and they do that, and they kind of, obviously they kind of like each other beyond just the transactional shit, because I don't think it would have gotten that far if she didn't. This doesn't seem like some shit she would just do with anybody. I think on some level, both Russian and kind of, there were some connective threads, and he's young, and the guy is attractive, and she goes to the house, he's got money, and he seems to be able to do what he wants. And, it all seems like a person who maybe, and so they're doing all of this. And then when they get to that moment about marriage and everything, it is like the Cinderella story in that way. He seems like the prince, the rich person that can take her out of this life of doing this and fending every day and working and all of that kind of stuff. And it seems like, I'm not saying she was in rags like Cinderella, but it is sort of rags when you look at the way her job is perceived versus what she could have potentially became the wife of this rich, like super witch and part of this wealthy family. So it is sort of they were almost like royalty, in a lot of ways, the way that they acted and just the control that they seem to have even without being there and everything like that. So it did kind of seem like this Cinderella situation. And so a lot of this movie, I think, is Anora trying to hold on to this fantasy. She's trying to hold on to the Cinderella. I even think like another cool scene was like right after they got married, she was talking about the honeymoon. And she even goes, man, I want the honeymoon to be in Disney World. And what is that one suite with the Disney princesses? And they all said Cinderella. So this shit was throwing out hella clues to you, obvious clues that there is a part of her that's what she wanted. She thought highly of herself, and yes, she's working, but there was this possibility to fulfill that storybook fantasy, right? That Cinderella story, it seemed like it could be a possibility for her with this guy. But like y'all already talked about, all throughout these sex scenes and all throughout these interactions, they are giving you these clues that maybe this is not going to work out. Vanya with the wham bam sex scene and almost having to be taught to be slower and to be more intimate. There was another scene I really liked in the first act where he's playing the video game and she's trying to connect with him. She's trying to speak Russian and she's trying to talk to him and trying to connect with him. And it's just not working. He's just into the game. He's not connecting, anything like that. And she almost had to force him off the game. And even then he was like, man, I was on a mission. I lost the game. And he's like, okay, what do you want to do? You want to have sex or whatever? It's just like y'all said, everything is kind of, and in that way, everything is kind of a game to this guy. he's running from responsibility. We find out later that he's supposed to be kind of, I guess, starting to make the transition into his father's business to start working, and he's running from that. So this is somebody who is a grown-ass, kind of a grown kid. He doesn't want to grow up. He's running from those responsibilities. And all of him having fun and doing all of this stuff is really just not only him escaping, but also I think there's this thing about him being rich and having all the money and resources and not having a care in the world. He's not a worker. He's not working. He just has everything. And he's just, kind of, and is running away from any part of those responsibilities at all. He just wants to party, party, party. And there are subtle things that they're doing with him too about how he treats other people. Like how when they were at the party and one of them was knocking on the door and he was like, hey man, know your place. He says these subtle things like, know your place. And the way that he was talking to Toros and Garnick whenever they got there and were trying to get control of the situation. So even how he was talking down to them and everything, or telling that story about, oh, it was funny when my cleaning lady smoked and she got caught in the chemo chamber or something. And then when the lady was like, hey, what are you talking about? He was like, oh, just be quiet, keep working. They were giving you all these subtle clues. It wasn't even so much just about his immaturity and all of that and the game he was kind of playing with her. But I think also there was this thing of how he looked down on other people and what they were to him, and kind of a know your role type of thing. You were underneath me. You were going to do this because I want to do this. I'm in control of the situation, etc. I have the power and everything like that. So I think there was a little bit of a dynamic of that as well.
Well, that and just throwing money around too, which was crazy.
No value of money whatsoever. Oh, you want me to pay you $25,000? Sure, I'll pay it. Hey, let's go to Vegas. Okay. Hey, let's go over here and do this. Just everything was on a whim. And then when the other characters like Toros and Garnick are talking about him and saying, man, we've been dealing with him since he was 6 years old. This is all he does. This is all he's ever been. He has been like this since he was a kid. He just does what he wants. He just kind of is that spoiled rich kid that kind of gets to do what he wants. And he loves that life so much. This thought of having to go back to Russia and be responsible and start working in his father's company and everything, he's just trying to avoid that like the plague. He does not want to do that. He loved this life of growing up and not having any worries, having all the money and just doing what he wanted all the time. So I think a lot of that is clearly there, but Anora kind of has her blinders on to some of that because there's a part of her that just wants to believe in this Cinderella fantasy, this Cinderella story.
And even when everybody's telling her, this is going to happen, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, because this is the real situation, all this other stuff. And she doesn't believe it. It's not, she wasn't fighting for it because she's like, oh, no, I want this money and I deserve this or I deserve whatever. Part of her just genuinely believed they were wrong.
Yeah.
You know, and it goes back to what
wanted
you were
to
saying.
hold on to what maybe he still has feelings for me. Maybe he does not want to do this.
Yeah. And if we just do this one thing, it'll work out. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
And if I just get the opportunity to talk to him, none of this is going to work out for you because, he'll side with me, not with you guys. All these things and the funny thing is it seemed like they were being mean to her and be like, he doesn't actually love you. This is just what he does, all this other stuff. You think, the movie treats it to where it's like she thinks they're just trying to be mean to her. When in all actuality, when all's said and done, they were just warning her. They were just telling her the truth. And she just didn't want it to be the truth.
Yeah.
And it's almost like that plus like you could tell she just so badly wanted respect too, because like, I think she probably thought, you know, part of the idea of being with this man who is so rich and like can have whatever he wants and he wants me and he doesn't see me as just a sex worker or whatever. Like, I think she thought she was going to get respect from that. And everybody was saying the exact same things about her that they were saying before. Like, oh, she's just a prostitute. She's just this or that. Like, what are you even doing? This is stupid. Like, she just felt like nobody respected her, like anywhere she went.
Yeah. Yeah. All of those things are coming into play. And what's really cool about this twist or when everything turned is that it really, really seemed like what we were about to do was it was going to be these two young people on the run, running from these goons and these lapdogs and goons that the family had sent after them and everything. And it seemed like what it was about to be was them on the run. That's what it totally seemed like was going to happen. And
like them
then,
against the world.
Yeah, us against the world. Some Bonnie and Clyde, but just with this shit. You know, it really seemed like that's what they were about to do.
That's legit what I thought the movie was going to be based on the trailer.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what and he spent 45 minutes getting you to buy into that being the possibility. And that's why I love this twist. And I know y'all don't like Parasite, but to quickly say something about it, but that's why that movie came to mind.
Jastin, I just didn't like it as much as you.
I know, but all I'm talking about is, but I'm not trying to convince you to like it. I'm just talking about how similar I saw the story elements. Because in that, they spent 45 minutes getting you to buy into this movie being a caper movie with this family infiltrating this house and everything like that. And then we meet this other people and find out, oh shit, there's some people under the house leeching off of these people too. And it changes the dynamic. To me, this was like the same shit. For 45 minutes, we are kind of buying and investing in this relationship and this possibility, and all these things are happening with these two characters. And then you think, okay, we're going to be on the run. And then I love how it all happened, and it was so sudden, and it's taken you as the viewer by surprise, and you're having to react to all these things happening, because when he goes, let's go, you're thinking, okay, she's going to leave with him. She's going to put on some pants and hit the door. And then he's like, bye. And he just runs out the door. And I'm like, wait, is he gone? And just like Anora, when she's sitting on that couch going, man, he didn't run away. He went to go get some help. He's going to come back and everything. There was even a part of me that expected him to come back at some point. I thought maybe he was going to try to come and get her at some point or do something or something like that. So that's why I love the storytelling of it so much, because even I was thinking, okay, he's got to show up at some point. No, that motherfucker was gone. And now all of a sudden we are in this, like you said, Sterling, almost this buddy cop, odd couple-ish road trip movie, you know, with these other people that I think that is on purpose, that when you really look at them, they are workers too. That's the common thread with all these other characters. These are the workers. And then you have the rich non-worker who we're running after, or these rich people that are all kind of dictating the lives of these people. And we kind of saw examples of that. This Toros was at a baptism for what I'm guessing might have been a grandson or something like that, and had to drop all of it to come do this shit.
I believe that would have been his godson.
Okay, I was thinking something, grandson, godfather, some shit.
I mean, I could be wrong. If somebody out there hears this and they're like, Sterling, you're wrong, fair enough, correct me. But from what I've experienced, especially with Catholics, these would be Russian Orthodox Catholics, or at least of the Russian Orthodox Church. when you baptize, or I'm sorry, when you christen the baby, you do it with the godparents, because that's also the godparents taking on the responsibility of parenthood if something were to happen with the kid, but also it's taking responsibility for the spiritual growth of baby. And that's the purpose of the godparents. So I believe that's what he was. In that scenario, I believe he would have been the godfather of that baby.
And I don't know everything about it, but anytime I've seen that depicted or talked about, I know that's like a very important, sacred type of thing. And the fact that he had to walk out in the middle of that, because whatever we need you to do, you need to do it. We don't care what's going on in your life. We don't care what the situation is. This cloud ass 21-year-old that won't take responsibility and everything takes precedence. So whatever you're doing, even if it's something as sacred and as and that's religious. So this has to do with his beliefs and everything. And he had to drop it. Him and Garnick was there supporting him. So there you got the sense that they are friends. They are people that have a connection with it. He was there too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So having to drop that to go do this, and we don't find this out till later in the movie, but Igor's birthday was the day before. So on his birthday that nobody knew about, he couldn't celebrate it because he's going around trying to do this whole ordeal because he works for them. You know what I mean? He also is another worker, but he's sort of lower on, but of those three, he's the lowest on the totem pole. He's like the cleaner or the lapdog, or they had a word that they kept using, a word that starts with a G.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Gupnik or some, I don't want to make up a word and it wouldn't be the word, but there was a word that they kept calling him. And you could tell of the dynamic of those three, Igor was the lowest among them. And when you look at on the other side of that, Anora, who is a sex worker, who is kind of considered of workers, like the lowest there. So I feel like maybe that's why the movie goes that direction, because of these people, those are your two lowest as far as the hierarchy of workers and stuff like that, and just positionings on this thing. So I think maybe that's why the director set it up that way. And like y'all are talking about, all through this movie, when we're going on this trip, we're doing all of this stuff, we're having all of these different dynamics, and she's hearing this story and finding out more about this guy through these other people. And you're seeing all of these people sort of tied together because of an irresponsible kid, but because this kid is somebody's kid that's important, we are all kind of in this web, we're caught in this web right now and can't get out of it. But as they go through this, they're connecting more. You're learning more about them. And even me as a viewer, I'm like, these are just the goons. You know, why are we with the goons? Even I am looking at them as just goons, because even from just like a cinematic standpoint, goons are normally just the throwaway guys. They're just getting fucked up. These are the guys that get beat up by Batman. These are the guys that, you know, that just get brushed to the side. These are the guys that get bitched around and slapped around by our main antagonist or our main boss villain or whatever. So I love how this movie played with all of those dynamics, because he's not just playing with the dynamics and how they're usually written, but he's also playing with the viewer and our own kind of self-conceived notions about these people and who they are and what they represent and how they're normally depicted in movies. So I loved all of that shit. I think it's just, there's so much that he's saying with just the little subtle things he was doing. And just to say a little bit about Igor, Yeah, man, I agree. Like, he's doing so much with his eyes. He's doing so much with his looks. And the cool thing about Igor, I think, is while you have the people on the other workers higher up on the totem pole, I guess, if you will, talking down to her, calling her, well, you're just a prostitute, or some calling her a whore, or you're just this call girl, or whatever like that. You never got that from Igor. Igor never seemed like he disrespected her or saw her as just this thing or saw her as just this person not to be respected. He never did that. There are times where when like that, the conversation with the mother, with Mother Vanya, was very telling, because she's looking away from Mother Vanya, but she's facing the direction of Igor. And as the mother is kind of going into this diatribe of, oh, if you try to sue us and all of this stuff, it's going to destroy your family. I know you don't have much money. How are you going to afford to even fight us? Like, just that harsh reality that, man, this shit ain't set up for you to win. Like, you can't win with that little bit of money and resources. You would never win any kind of battle like this. Being who you are, being who we are, you can't win this. And like, what was interesting was how Igor was reacting to it too, because you could see that in those moments, him feeling for her. He knew that this hurts. He knew what was being said hurt, and he knew on some level she didn't deserve this. But he also could understand in a way, because to them, he's also the lowest of the low. He probably has been looked at in a similar way. He probably has been treated a similar way. Not like, oh, you're a prostitute, but oh, you're just a lapdog. You're just a guy that stays with your grandmother trying to make ends meet. You know, that's who he was. He was just a worker and a hustler, kind of like her. So, you know, I think as you're going on this journey, and even though she sort of starts off hating him and everything like that, and the situation totally justifies that, we're finding out, though, just how similar they are. Like in placement, what they are, their positions, what they're doing, everything like that. So I thought all of that was great. And it wasn't like it was giving you these big scenes to tell you that. It's all subtly with the acting and the reacting to each other and everything like that. So
really
anyway,
quick, really quick on Igor. I just wanted to say, like, I think another, like, I don't know, like, interesting thing about like what he does is they just completely, or not them, but Annie just completely misjudged him, like, at every turn. Like, even like when they're having food and she's like wanting to get drugs, she's like, yeah, give me some of that too. And he's like, I don't deal drugs. Like, no, that's not my thing. And like, this car is very you. Well, it was my grandmother's. And like, just all of these things that she has such a preconceived idea about who he is. And he's just not at all like the other, you know, goons, you know? And so I think that was kind of a cool dynamic to also add in, of like, she has her reasons why she's not trusting him because of that first interaction they had, but he's just completely, again, like, just not at all what she's painting him out to be.
Yeah. And it's ironic as fuck, because what everybody was painting her out to be, just this sex worker, just this whore, just this person who doesn't have any control. You don't have a say. You are not in control of this. We are. And then ironically, she's kind of doing that to him, but really they are the two most similar people in the movie. You know, when you really look outside of just some of the character dynamics of it. So all of that is just great shit. And yeah, those interactions are funny too. Him saying, no, I just, you know, that was my grandmother's. I just got him that because I was just trying to help him. And then that's another thing about Igor. He was sincere. everything about what he was doing was sincere. When he said, I was holding you earlier so you wouldn't hurt yourself, that was sincere. When he gave the pills to Garnick to try to help him, that was sincere. At the end of the film, when he took that ring and somehow stole that ring and gave it back to her, that was sincere. When he asked Mother Vanya and said, I think that Vanya should apologize to her. Like, the only person to kind of in that moment stand up for her in a way and demand an apology, because, and it wasn't like, oh, I'm doing this because I want to get something from her, or I'm in love with her, or anything like that. I think it was more just an understanding of, man, she was put through all this hell, all of this shit happened, all of this happened, and he could tell just by the interactions with her that there was a part of her that really believed that maybe Vanya had feelings for me. Maybe Vanya wants us to continue in this marriage. He got to be there and see her holding on to that, and see her get broke from that, and see how everybody was treating her. And he was right there looking at, watching Vanya kind of be like, yeah, we're getting a divorce. Are you stupid? Like, the jig is up. I mean, but we had fun though, right? You know, he was there for all of that shit. So, like, yeah, I just really like what they were doing with that character. And I guess that all leads up to the ending and talking about that. So I guess I'll just go first with what I thought about. Well, first of all, it was superbly acted by both of them. I'll just start with that. Just get the easiest part of it out of the way. Man, that was just some badass acting in that final scene, because, like, I think Anora had been holding on to all of this, and it's sort of just the frustration of it all and everything kind of comes up to the surface. But what was interesting, though, to me was, or how I interpreted the scene was, so he hands her the ring, and he has done this incredibly nice thing. And I think on some level, it's kind of that realization that this guy was nothing like that I thought he was. You know, clearly he had been underestimated, and clearly he was not what she thought he was. And the interesting thing about what she did was that after that happens and he gets back in the car and everything, I almost felt like the reason why she attempted to have sex with him was because I think on some level she was trying to fulfill another transaction. It was like, you got the ring from me, so now I am going to return, I'm going to return the favor or what you did with sex, because that's what her whole,
the only way she knows how.
Yeah, that's what she knows how to do. It was, I need to repay you in some kind of way. I'm going to use my body to repay you, because what else do I have in this moment? This is what I have. And the interesting thing is that I think it was done on purpose. Like, she spends a lot of time and appears to be kind of like, trying to get him hard to do this. And what stood out to me was he wasn't even hard. That wasn't his intention. It wasn't like he was like, I'm giving you this so I can get some ass or try to date you or anything like that. I don't really think that, maybe y'all think differently, but I don't even think that was Igor's intentions. I think he was just being sincere. There was just an understanding he had of her situation, being that he is in a similar place, like on the totem pole of where she is. Low level, I'll put that in quote, job, trying to make ends meet, but you're more than what the situation or the circumstance or your job is. I'm more than what my job is and who I'm associated with, just like her with the strip club and the sex work and stuff. But she's sitting there trying, right? And I think when he tried to kiss her and do something more intimate, she fought him because that's what she always does. Like, that's part of it, right? Well, you can't kiss us. You can't touch us in that way. And also, she had tried to connect, right, with Vanya, and that didn't quite work out. So I think it was just maybe the frustration, the embarrassment, kind of the reality that this was her reality. It was a bunch of stuff happening with her. But I found it very fitting that he just held her. You know what I mean? He didn't say anything. He kept looking her right in the eyes. And man, that actor does so much with his eyes. But I love how he didn't react. He didn't fight back. He just sort of held her there and was looking at her in the eyes, you know, really still trying to connect, still trying to just show that even in silence, he kind of understood. You know, it was like he, even still in that moment, he was letting her be crazy because of the understanding. Like, he even said that when they were sitting on the couch, we're both kind of crazy in a way. You know what I'm saying? And I think in that moment, he was just letting her do that because he understood, like, he needed to let her do that, you know? And I found it very fitting and kind of full circle that at the beginning of the movie, he's holding her, and that's the last thing she fucking wants. She's like, let go of me, let fucking go of me. I do not want to be held by you. But at the end, that he holds her, and that was what she wanted more than anything in that moment, was just a connection, just an understanding, just somebody to see her and treat her like a fucking human being. And that was him in that moment. And I don't know if that means they're going to be in a relationship. I don't even know if that's really what the movie was saying at all. But I think definitely there was a connection because of who they were, how they were represented in the story, and what they meant to other people, and how they were more than just their economic status, their jobs, like what they were in that moment. So that's kind of what I got out of it.
Heather, what about you?
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially you talking about how Igor is just usually sincere with what he's doing. And he just, in the moments he's in, he's like, what's the most sincere thing I can do? Like, he doesn't ever typically have like an ulterior motive. He's just doing the thing that he, you know, feels he should do. And I do agree with that. And I feel like I don't know, part of what I took from it too was, I think he, you know, had an interest in her for sure. But I think it was more of just like him trying to be like, hey, this isn't what you need right now. Like, you don't need to be doing this right now. I'm not expecting this of you. And this is not what you need after what you went through. And so, yeah, him trying to make that connection with her by just looking at her and all these things, like, I think it was him trying to have a deeper connection than what she wanted, but also him trying to be like, you know what, look at me so that, you know, like, I mean it when I tell you, like, it's okay to not do this. Like, I feel like that's kind of what he sort of meant with that, just looking at her and not trying to get anything out of what he did. But honestly, like, I guess I'm not really even as mad at the open-endedness of it, because I do think it was a really sweet and beautiful moment to just have her be held like that. I think that was really a good choice, and it was super well acted by both of them. But I feel like I just kind of wanted, I would have liked just a little bit more of like a lighthearted, happy, like, ending there, like, where, you know, it was just the two of them like hanging out, and like, she's, you know, giving him a hard time about his car and all this stuff, and then he's like, you want to go get some food or something like that, like, you know. And then it could have ended that way, and the open-endedness is fine. But I just feel like with this movie and everything she went through and just sort of the tone, like, I think it would have warranted a more like lighthearted note at the end. And I think I just wanted that too, because I was all about like their dynamic, and I was just like, I don't want anything but for them to end up together in the end of this. You know, like, it just was they had such a great chemistry, and everything like that. And yeah, I just feel like he was always the one looking out for her. And I think he was just intrigued by her because, you know, he just had never really met someone quite like her from these conversations he was having. It just felt like, you know, she was challenging him in ways that he really liked, even just with her words. And I think, yeah, that was just fun to watch them do that. But yeah, I think, I don't know. I think it would have been nice to have a little bit more of a fun, lighter note ending to it. But I'm not mad at all that they did the ending the way they did, because I think it was really sweet. And like, again, in the entire movie, that's the only connection we see her have that was just a very genuine, like, I care about you type of connection. So I do mostly agree with what you're saying.
I like that how you want like a happy, lighthearted ending, because that's just like the kind of person you are. So that's what you're going to seek from a movie like that. So I kind of fall close to you, Jastin, with it. I think he did develop feelings for her. But I think once again, I think there's like a lot of loaded aspects in the ending with this, because I think, like you said, Jastin, I think she was trying to use sex as a transactional thing. And she was using it with somebody that didn't want sex from her in a transactional way, you know, and
he wanted something more real. That's why he tried to, yeah.
And I think also part of it too is if you notice throughout the movie when she has sex with Vanya, I don't think it ever really shows them kissing ever. Because yes, it's very transactional, but even after they get married, I don't think there's anything like that, you know, when it comes to the sex scenes. And the fact that he wants to kiss her also shows that to him, it wasn't transactional. And so I think she's okay with sex being transactional as long as you're honest about it. You know, at the strip club, they're honest about it. I want you to perform a lap dance. Here is money. It's a very honest transaction in that regard. And I think the fact that she was trying to be transactional and that's not what he wanted, from that moment, I think was a realization for her. The fact that he wanted intimacy with it was, you know, weighed on her. And I think also the weight of everything else culminating in that moment. You know, the situation she had been in for the last like 2 fucking days. You know, that whole fucking deal adding to it, you know, where it's like, you know, it's very overwhelming because what she thought was real turns out to be transactional. Everybody's saying she'll have nothing but transactional sex for her life. That's all she's good for. All this stuff. And you've got a guy that doesn't want that from her, you know, and because her confidence got shaken by Vanya. You know, you're talking about how like assured and confident she was. It got shaken by him because she thought if anybody's going to defend me to his mom, it's him. And he didn't. And he's like, no, it's exactly what they said it was. You know, and the fact that he went to go, you know, get a dance and potentially hook up with her work rival added to that. And so all these different things. And, you know, so she tried to go back, you know, she tried to regain it when she was maybe not in the right mindset to regain that. And then you have this.
And she was projecting that she was still confident and powerful. You know, she yapped back at the mom, and then like the whole thing with the Anora thing. You know what I mean? Like that was big in this movie too. Like I think at times she would project and turn on the Annie, but at the end we saw Igor embraced Anora.
Yeah. And
you know,
so I think she was just very overwhelmed by all that, by him, by the whole situation. And, you know, she just needed that cathartic expulsion of everything that had been building up in her. And also knowing that she could let go of all that and be in a safe space with him. Ultimately, because she, like you said, Jess, she wanted to fight it. She wanted to fight this. She wanted to fight that. She wanted to, all these things. And that realization that not only can she not necessarily gain it back in this situation because it's just not that. You can't reclaim it if the situation's not that, and just all of that just culminating in that instance, because to me, I think this is weirdly one of those things where this movie has this interesting love story that develops completely in the background of the movie. Most movies have like the love story be the focus. It's like, hey guys, look at this love story. I think that there are elements, like even if it's not completely a romantic or, relationship style of love, there is a love story between Igor and Anora. Even if it is just we are two people that connect on this level. It may never be more than that. But it is still the elements of what is a traditional love story, but it happens in the background of the movie. It's never really the main focus. And that takes a lot of skill to do that. And to tiptoe around it, to never just make it front and center, to do all these things. And so I agree that this ending is open-ended, but I just don't think it completely is if you watch the movie. I think this ending isn't that up in the air as far as why it happened. It made complete sense to me why it happened. I think the only up in the air aspect of it, or what's open to interpretation, is potentially whether or not they become something afterward.
Yeah, they have a connection, but maybe like you were saying, you already kind of said it. I don't know if you caught it or not, but they have a connection, but how do you define this connection?
What is
like
the end result of the
connection? Is it a love connection? Is it just an understanding, kind of a connection of we understand each other because of who we are in this situation, and I understand? Is it just a connection that they understood in that moment? I think that's maybe where it can be a little more open.
Yeah, and that's fair. The complete definition of what they are after that moment is up in the air.
Yes.
But I don't think the reasoning behind it's up in the air. But also, like I said, I get what you're saying, Heather, because of your disposition. You want there to at least be something like hinting towards the future in a more optimistic manner. Because you enjoyed the building and the chemistry, so you like the idea that there's just more of that in the future. The movie ends, but you like the idea of just like sitting here going, man, I bet Anora and Igor are just eating burgers at a diner right now.
Yeah, that's 100% how my mind works. Yeah.
We've done enough of these. We're on like episode 300 and something.
Yeah.
And I think that really is the only thing that's up in the air. And when you're up in the air with that aspect of it, I think that's fine. I don't think every movie has to define every relationship that happens in the movie. That's fine. I think your themes need to be completed. I think those things need to be completed in a movie. I don't like it when those are up in the air. But I think this one doesn't do that. I think it's very clear as to why why that happens. But you might be right, Jastin. When they say up in there, they might just be talking about the relationship. I don't know. Yeah. Since I haven't seen the interview or know what they're implying or whatever from it, I don't know what aspect of it they're implying could be up in the air. Because to me, I thought it was fairly clear.
I mean, and something else too, like that I just remembered about Igor and Annie's relationship is when they get back to the house after everything happened and, you know, he's watching her for the night. I loved that exchange as well. Like their whole interaction during that evening where they kind of got to know each other a little bit. But what was interesting about it was like when she's addressing him and saying like, listen, you assaulted me. Like that's what you did, and explaining it. And from his perspective too, kind of playing into what you said earlier, Jastin, like these guys are just trying to do their jobs. And like, I feel like he was trying to explain this to her in a way of like, no, like that wasn't an assault. That wasn't assaulting you. I was restraining you basically so that you wouldn't run, because then I got to find you, or that you wouldn't hurt yourself, because, you know, like in all this, I don't want you to, you know, hurt yourself during your, you know, going wild when we got there. Like, I think that was interesting because it's similar to how people like misunderstand what her job is, or misunderstand how she feels about what she does for work. And him also having that conversation, but also seemingly not being sorry about it either, in the same way where he's just like, I was doing what I needed to do. And there was no intention of me ever harming you. There was never any ulterior motive behind it other than just get the job done, make sure she doesn't leave. Like do what you got to do to make sure she stays there so we can get this thing done.
Well, yeah. And you could almost see that conversation going the other way. Some guy talking to her going, oh, you toyed me on, and I spent all this money on you, and I thought you really cared about me. And then you could see her going, no, it was a transaction. You came into the club. This is
my job.
Yep, this is my job. You asked for some lap dances. I gave them to you. You wanted to go into the private room. We went and did that, and you paid for all of it. What are you not understanding? You know, you could almost see it happening that way too.
Yep. And and don't get me wrong. Like, I feel like if I were in her position, I would 100% think that he had assaulted me as well. Like just the way that he was restraining her. She didn't know him. She had no idea what was going on. She was probably terrified because she's like, why are you doing this? I don't even know why you're here. What's about to happen? So from her perspective, I completely see why that's what it was. But it was just so interesting to hear him explain it in a way where you're like, we know this guy enough to feel like we can trust him and what he's saying. So when he explains it in the way he does, you don't feel like he's just trying to get away with doing something bad, you know?
And with that too, like that whole scene though, of when they first meet and all this other stuff, I'm not gonna lie, I was on pins and needles that whole scene because I was thinking she was going to step on glass that whole time. That was just running through my mind. She's going to step on glass. Oh, that's going to be so bad. That would hurt so much. And all this stuff. But also I was thinking, oh, he's going to beat the fuck out of her. Because they're like, yeah, you're the mother. He's like, why am I even coming to this? He's like, just in case his friends are there and they want to play a game, you fucking straighten them out. Which is what he does at the candy shop. They're like, fucking take care of this. He's the muscle. But I really appreciate that no matter what the fuck she did to him, the idea of hurting her never crossed his mind. Like, because that's not who he is. Like, he's not there just to hurt her or do anything like that. It's like, don't let her get away. Okay, she won't get away. But then, like, she bites the fuck out of him. How many other movies, when that happens, would he, like, throw her to the couch and, like, slap her?
Or when she was screaming bloody murder, and he would be like, you know, shut up, stop it, and like hit her in the face or something. But he was just like screaming back because he's like, please stop.
Like he was having weirdly realistic like reactions to some of that stuff. But in the way of like, yeah, I might be the muscle, but I'm not a monster.
But it is subverting those expectations again of like, kind of like what you talked about in Nosferatu, where you're like, we've been told this is how they will respond. But he just doesn't respond in those ways at all.
This is how the muscle acts.
Yeah. This is what the goon is supposed to do. This is what the goon is supposed to say. And that she even reflected some of that when they were at dinner and saying, oh, where are the drugs? All this shit. You know, it's all that kind of shit that a goon is supposed to do. And in a way, he kind of was, if anything, she was a loud crazy, and maybe he was more of a quiet, because every now and then he would just ask her something and it would be the most awkward of times. Like, is that a real mink coat? Like, just out of nowhere. Like, everything is so like tense in this car and everything like that. And he would just be like, I think he's on a bender. Isn't it called a bender? You know what I mean? He was a little eccentric and weird, but I think he was a quiet crazy and she's the loud crazy. You know what I mean? Another reason why they're kind of two sides of the same coin, man.
Yeah, why it works.
They're two sides of the same coin, dude.
But also
work status, preconceived notions, the whole journey, they're two sides of the same coin.
But also they're like, he's also the whole thing, and both of them really are like to a point that like crazy doesn't automatically equal bad either.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was crazy. She was fighting what she thought was her marriage.
Mm-hmm.
He's crazy, but he just, was legitimately, like as you said, doing his job, but also trying to do his job in a way that doesn't hurt her.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, everybody's like, why the fuck are you tying her up? And he's like, because she's fucking attacking me. It wasn't, I'm not tying her up.
They made
to
him feel
hurt
crazy
her.
for it. Yeah.
I'm not tying her up to hurt her. I'm not tying her up to rape her. I'm not tying her up to do anything bad. I don't want her to fucking throw shit anymore.
You're so right.
There's glass everywhere. I want that to not happen.
And it's funny because even the own guys that have hired him feel like he's going to be that guy because they're like, why was she on top of you? And all. He's like, I'm holding her so she doesn't run away. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Or hurt herself or step on the glass and all this stuff. He's like, I wasn't trying to do anything. I'm just trying to make sure nothing happens. I thought that's why I'm here, to make sure nothing bad happens.
Yeah.
Like he just had like that mindset of like, well, she's throwing things. I'm tying her up. And they're like, but why would you do that? Fucking throwing things. And he's like, when she's screaming, like I said, what he does, he just like looks at her. He's like, quit fucking screaming. And I'm like, that is the most in control goon ever. Like, it's just those things. Like every time during that whole scene, I'm just like, oh, he's going to hit her. He just never close. And I like it because it establishes who he is then. And so that's why, to me, when you get to that scene, when she's like, you wanted to rape me. And he's like, what? And she's like, why didn't you do that? He's like, what are you talking about? Why are you bringing up the rape word? Where did that come from? Like, because to him, it was so far away from anything he'd ever do. Just the idea of her talking about it in that situation, he's just like, wait, what? Like, it's out of left field for him.
Which is why he's even like, while he's confused, he's also like slightly not amused, I would say, but he's thinking of it like, you're joking, right? Like the way he's responding, he's like, this is a joke, right? Because literally, I would not be doing that.
Yeah. And like his reaction is just so like, where did this come from? And like, and that's
because I'm not a rapist.
And that's
like,
why his response is a joke. I know it's not something you traditionally should, but it works in this movie because he's like, because I'm not a rapist. That's why I wasn't going to rape you. I'm not a rapist. Like it's just so matter of fact to him. Like the idea that he would rape you is just like mind boggling to him. Like it severely threw him off because he's just like, that's not what I do.
And she was probably looking for even more of like an explanation from him or expecting him to have like something he says really like moving to why. But he's just like, no, it's just very simply because that's just not who I am.
Yeah. And it goes back to like, I think it's an old Ricky Gervais joke. I think it's in one of his TV shows. Not like a comedy special, but a TV show he did. But it is very accurate because, you know, he's an atheist and somebody was like, in one of his shows is like a Christian. She's like, well, where do you have morals from if you don't believe in God? And he's like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, well, like, if you don't believe in God and you don't have any morals, why don't you go around raping and murdering as much as you want? And his response is, I do. And she's like, what do you mean? He's like, because I don't want to rape and murder anybody. So I am raping and murdering as much as I want because I don't want to do it. What do you mean? It's like, because it's the whole idea of like, are you saying the only reason you don't rape and murder is because of that? Like, it's mind-boggling to him. He's like, yeah, I do rape and murder as much as I want, which is none, because I don't want to. Like, what are you talking about? It's the same type of mindset of like, yeah, I didn't rape you because I did. Why would I? I'm not that. Like, it really is that same type of mindset, though. He's like, because that's just not what I want. What do you mean? And like, that's why it is kind of funny, is because of his, like you said, Heather, his reaction of just like, you're joking, right? Like, this is an American joke. Like, I just don't get it because of Russian American. Like, I just don't get the joke. And then she's like, no, why didn't you? He's like, oh, I guess this is real. Because I'm not a rapist. And then, like, I liked the scene where she goes upstairs and she brings him the blanket. And then, like, I like the scene because she wakes up in the morning and she goes and looks out the window. But, like, part of that is also the symbolization of, like, oh, he didn't even try anything last night. Like, even consensually try to come do something. Because that's not what he's trying to do. He's just, he's looking out for me right now. Or like he said to her, I'm supporting you. Like, that's all he was doing. He wasn't trying to ulterior motive shit. He was just trying to express to her, like, I dig you. And like I said, is that a romantic way? Is that whatever kind of way? That is up in the air. But yeah, he digs her in some way, shape, or form. He's got a thing for her, or at least to the degree of I respect you as a human being and I see you.
Yeah.
As two people on this planet connecting to each other. I see you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guys, we fucked up. We did it again.
We did it again.
I promise you, one of these days we won't do an episode close to 3 hours.
There's just so many layers.
Though. It doesn't matter what the movie is.
We did 3 hours on Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Oh my God.
How did we go 3 hours on Pooh?
We did 3 hours on Sonic. We did 3.5 hours on Sonic. We did like 2 hours and 45 minutes on Kraven the Hunter. Now, granted, an hour of that was me avoiding the movie. But we didn't even try to avoid the movie. We wanted to dive into this. Ugh. One of these days, I promise, we'll calm this down. Maybe next week. Maybe. Who knows? You guys got anything else, though?
No.
I'm good.
On that note, thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Cinema Slayers podcast. Check us out on the internet at www.cinemaslayers.com. We are Cinema Slayers Podcast on Facebook. We are Cinema_Slayers on Threads, Instagram, and Letterboxd. We are at Cinema Slayers Pod on TikTok, maybe. Technically speaking, by the time this episode comes out, TikTok may not be a thing. We will see. Until it is officially gone, I will still plug it. And we're at Cinema Slayers Podcast on YouTube. Give us a 5-star rating and review. We really appreciate it. It'd really help us out. Shout out to Plug Migo and Mundo Ocho for our theme song and logos, respectively. Tell your family, tell your friends, tell your friends' family, tell your family's friends. And most of all, tell those dear sweet mothers, because dear sweet mothers love
goons with a heart of gold.
Bear. We here at the Cinema Slayers Podcast are pro slut, pro Sydney, pro naked. You. Yes, you, Cinefans, you are enough. And justice for Chris, justice for Todd, justice for all those wonderful stunt people animators, and caterers out there that make all these movies possible. And as always in the podcast, the YouTube videos, and the TikToks, just remember, according to Jastin, Moon Knight, even though it angers me, Moon Knight is a Best Picture winner. I almost played the wrong one.
Well, maybe Daredevil will be a best. Well, I guess it can't be a Best Picture winner, but
oh man, say Daredevil's the Best Picture
winner.
Say Daredevil's the Best Picture winner because that automatically means you're talking about 2003's Ben Affleck Daredevil.
No. Still don't know why they were fighting in that damn park.
Jastin, you have to admit that's at least better than the clothes-on fucking scene from Catwoman in the park.
Yeah.
That's rough.
But could you imagine sitting there, though, at the playground going, why is that woman hitting that, trying to hit that blind man?
That's what, to me, actually makes that funnier. Is if you're watching that, you're like, why the fuck is that woman attacking that blind man? But also, why is that blind man balancing on the seesaw?
Yeah, why is he? How is he doing this? What is happening?
That is at least something that you're like, oh, okay, that's different. Then why is that lady fucking that cop on the basketball court in front of the kids?
Yeah, that was rough, brother.
Why did those movies come out, I think, the same year? What in comic book movie hell was that? That you have a woman attacking a blind man in front of kids while they cheer, and a woman fucking a cop in front of kids while they cheer. What is going on, people?
I know. Why do children have to be there? Why in front of the children? Is nothing sacred?
Apparently society had just different things on their mind in 2003. They were just like, hey guys, if you're going to do something with kids in a movie, make sure it's on a playground. Oh, that sounded terrible.
That sounded awful.
That sounded so bad.
It is time for us to go to bed.
This is the opposite of what you really wanted it to be.
It is time for us to go the fuck to bed. And you need to be put in timeout.
The sad thing is you're having that reaction because of what you saw in those movies, though, too. You're just like, you're absolutely right. You should not be doing that. It's bad. Like, maybe that's the problem, is nobody said it out loud. And then, like, if they
maybe that is what
they just didn't say it out loud, and if they would have had the reaction I had. Like, man, you're gonna have a fight in a movie. It needs to be on this playground with the kids. Like, no. Like, when Benjamin Bratt and Halle Berry fuck in this movie, they need to do it in front of kids. Wait, no. Like, you just got to hear it. And they would have known, because I said that, and immediately I was like, what the fuck did I just say? What fucking words came out of my mouth? Oh, man. Jastin, I now know how you feel, and I have to apologize to you for the drenched cakes.
See? You know what's up.
This is what happens at 1:30 in the morning when you've been talking for 3 fucking hours. You end up saying some stupid shit you should never say.
Yeah. You got that right.
Fuck my
wet cakes and red Washingtons and all.
Oh, Jastin, you motherfucker. You motherfucker. As I've famously said before, you morose motherfucker.
Yes.
No, we're fucking done, guys. We're done.
My favorite compliment.